guys, and welcome to Little Black Book 91. Yes, I am back. If you've been watching our shows and obviously our breakdowns, you know I've been talking about Married at First Sight, the latest season, and it's been one of intrigue. Many of us have had different thoughts and many different opinions, and I thought I'll go straight to the source on this one. We are interviewing and sitting down with Josh from the latest Married at First Sight, who also was married to Jalyn, and it was quite the interesting journey. I know when we watched the reunion, we were all a little bit sad that, you know, that the journey came to an end, but we also understand that relationships aren't always easy. So I want to welcome Josh to the show. How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I mean, yeah, I'm doing good. I just, I feel like it's time to get a little bit off my shoulders for sure.
I love that. I love that. Look, before we get into any kind of the show, any talking about you, you know, because of course we want to get to know you a bit more before the show as well. I got a few icebreakers, a few games just to kind of help us along. You know, we have to lighten the load. You know, we don't get straight into, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know the association game, where someone says a word and you got to associate that word with something. So if I say something like car, you could say something like wheels. If I say something like the sky, you could say something like birds. It's just association, whatever you associate with those particular words, just to kind of get us warmed up. This is my improv days from drama. This is coming back up to me.
There we go. All right.
Okay. All right. I want to choose a word. My first word is married.
That's a good one. Difficult. It's difficult. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just leave it with one word. Yeah.
No, go on. You gonna say that? Go on.
Yeah. Difficult, but I think rewarding at the same time. You know, regardless of the direction Jalyn and I went, I learned a lot from this experience, and that's what matters.
Okay. All right. Fine. Difficult. I like it. Okay. Here's another word. Divorce.
Divorce. It's a strong word. It's a strong word. It's a yeah. It's tough. It's tough. Yeah.
It's tough. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Take it as that word. Okay. My next word, Burning Man. I know it's two words.
Burning Man.
One word. Burning Man.
Man. Now, one word to describe Burning Man, that's tough. Exploring. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Exploring.
That's what Burning Man really brings out of me. It's like that childlike self. It brings that child that I was when I was 7, 8 years old, getting lost in the woods. It brings that back to reality for me. It allows me to just relive that moment.
Okay, deep. I like it. Okay, fantastic. All right, that's phase one. Let me get to phase two of my other game. I've got another game for. Nah, it's not a game. It's not a game. I'm joking. I just got a few questions. Ice breaking. You know, just to warm us up a little bit. Okay. So my first question for you is: if you had an empty plane ticket, you could go anywhere in the world, anywhere at any time. I would love to know, where would Josh go?
Oh man, that's a good one. I'm actually leaving to Brazil in 2 days. So yeah, I'm going to Brazil in 2 days to see two of my very good friends who are actually at Jalyn and I's wedding. Julia and Greg, I'm going to see them get married here in a couple of days. But if I could go anywhere again, or anywhere, if it was right here today, I would say to Colombia, because my best friend in the world, David, he was on the show as well. He is currently in Colombia. That's where he's from. And he's working on a personal brand of his. And I'd like to just go see what that looks like, you know, in person. I'd like to be there to support him. So if I could be anywhere right here today, it'd be Colombia.
Love that. Okay, Colombia would be a nice place. I like it. Colombia, next on the bucket list, as they say. Okay.
Yeah, never been. So
never been, never by, to be honest. So I might have to join you. Next question on icebreaker is a bit of an interesting one here. iPhone or Android? It's important.
That's an easy
You
one.
need to know if we're gonna
That's an easy one. iPhone.
Your boy T's got the iPhone as well, you know.
There we go. That's the easiest one you asked me so far.
Yeah.
I used to be an Android guy. Android guy for the longest time. But then I got tired of buying phones, and like 2 weeks later, the battery life was like 1.5 hours. And I was just sick of spending like, at that time, like $500 on a phone, $600 on a phone. And then the battery just going downhill immediately. So yeah, I transferred over to the iPhone game probably 10 years ago, and I never looked back.
It's understandable, man. It's understandable. Listen, you know, I mean, I like to flex between the two, so I can't really judge. I've got iPhone and Android. I could have been going up. You know what I mean? So I definitely hear you. Okay, last question. Last question for you. Now, this is really a big tiebreaker. This will make sure that we know whether, you know, we like to call it human verification. Make sure you're human. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I need to know, cereal or milk, which one goes in the bowl first?
The cereal.
The
cereal goes in the bowl first. I want the most substance. I want the most substance to my breakfast. And so I fill that bowl up as much as I want with cereal. Then I pour the milk slowly on top of it, so it engulfs instead of just makes it float. Yeah. Just let it fill up. And then I'm kind of weird. I kind of like my cereal like a little bit on the soggier side. So I'll let it sit for a second and then I eat it. Yeah. Yeah. What about you? I'm curious.
You know, I like to have, you know, a little bit of the milk in first, then add too much cereal.
I mean, it's okay to be wrong, man. It's okay to be wrong. You know, I'm here for it. It's okay to be wrong.
I want to hear crunch. You know what I mean? I want to feel the crunch. You know what I mean?
Okay, understood.
So, put the milk in first. You know what I mean? But listen, you've passed our human verification. We believe you're human. The answers you've given, yes, we appreciate it, and we've broken some ice as well. Let's get into some conversation. But, you know, before we talk about Married at First Sight, you were somebody before the show, right? And so we want to understand where you're coming from before we talk about Married at First Sight. I've got a question. My question is, and it's very open, you can take it any way you want it. Who is Josh, and what is Josh's story?
You know, that's a very, very interesting question. And it's actually a very long-winded question, and you might have
to bring me back.
You might have to bring me back to reality. Okay. Not to reality, but back to the question here before long. So, you know, this is actually a really important question that, you know, I'm sure everybody remembers that conversation over community, right? So that topic was something that meant that conversation, that realization was something that meant so much to me. And it's one of the things that brought out, that made me realize what I valued most in life and current experiences, which is community. And so the reason I say that is because I'm 33 today. For 28 years of my life, I was an extreme introvert. Like, I would, you know, after I got out of school, I worked. I would go to work. I worked a regular 9 to 5. I worked for the state. I'd go to work. I'd go to the gym, work out, put my headphones in, not talk to a single soul, go home. I lived alone. I'd close my door because I was that concerned about having to talk to anybody. And I would just do my own thing. In my room, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to do anything. You know, one social experience a month was enough to completely deplete my social battery. And so that was me until I was 28 years old. You know, and then, you know, one of my friends, he talked me into going to a show. It was a Tiesto show, actually. And, you know, there was just something about it, man. Like, it was just something about it. I went, and, I wasn't much of I didn't like to dance. I didn't like to move. I was so self-conscious about that kind of stuff, about moving, like thinking about other people staring at me, you know, those kinds of things, like that. It was like hard for me to experience that before finding the EDM community, so that one experience, man, I went, I had, the time of my life, at that point, like I don't drink. I hardly drink at all, still today, I might have a couple of drinks a month, really. That experience literally changed my life. It completely changed my life. Like that one show. Well, I actually went to 2 shows back to back with that same friend group. I went to Tiesto, and then the next day I saw another DJ called Griffin, and I just saw them back to back. And man, like I said, it just changed my life. It changed how I viewed social interaction. It changed how I loved, like it was like a light switch, flipped overnight. And I don't know, it's just one of those things that, like I said, it just completely changed my life. And so now I'm far more social than I ever was. And yeah, I really owe it to that community. They allowed me to, I don't know, it's just something beautiful about it. Like everybody was just having a good time, like dancing. Nobody was worried about anybody else. I don't know. It's just one of those things that it just, like, for the first time in my life, I felt free. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere, and, to me, that was, and I mean, to go back, further, like way back, the way I grew up, I grew up extremely poor. I went to 4 high schools, and before that, I probably went to 2, 3 middle schools. I definitely went to at least 2 elementary schools. My family moved a lot. Yeah, we were really poor growing up. And so, I was always really athletically inclined and those types of things, but I was never able to play sports. I was never able to play sports because my family couldn't afford to put me through sports.
Understood.
And so, so like once more, I never felt, community in a lot of these things. And, looking back, I can see, like one of the things that, I was really involved in my church youth group whenever I was, an early teenager, maybe 13 to 15, 16. I was really involved in my youth group. And I still look at 2 of those people in my life, 2 of those youth directors in my life that were so influential to me, like in the long run, because I think growing up, I had a lot of good, what is it called? When you look up to somebody, good role models. Yeah, I had a lot of good role models. A lot of good role models. And I had some, role models that I don't want to say were bad role models, but were people, and things that I was able to see even at a young age and realize I didn't want to be that way. I didn't want to be that way. And so I don't know, like, sorry, I kind of forgot why I kind of went down that path, but
that's all right.
Yeah. So about me, my uncles taught me how to mow grass when I was like 8 years old. And so from the time I was like 8 until 17, the first thing I'd do when I got home would be get my lawnmower, pull it behind my bike, and go knock on doors, and I'd go knock on like random people's doors, asking if I could do some yard work to earn some extra money, all those types of things. So that way I could go back home, help my grandmother with, the electric bill or, whatever was needed. And it was crazy. Like looking back now, I'm just like, holy cow, like some Saturdays I'd come home with like $300 in my pocket, like, and I was mowing grass for I was mowing a whole yard for like $20.
They'll cheating you.
I was working my butt off. So, so yeah, I think a lot of those things led to who I am today. But I'd say like the biggest change in my life happened at, only 5 years ago. That was when I came back into my, that's when I was really able to go back into my entrepreneurship ways, when I was able to, dive back into that, because I kind of lost track of it from, 16, 17 years old through, 20, man, I got in this field when I was 27, 28. And so, yeah, I was 27 when I got in this field. So I went from, living paycheck to paycheck to making good money to starting my own business, to completely changing who I am as a social human And this all happened within 5 years of my life, like all of it. So, yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but I feel like I lived a very simple life all the way up until 28. And then things just all changed.
I love that. Saying obviously, like you mentioned, it's funny because it's Burning Man, and but it's interesting that you talk about obviously this just drastic change and the last 5 years, which have really shaped you in a very unique perspective, and brought you to this new place as well. I'm intrigued because you spoke about poverty. You spoke about your uncles obviously raising you. We know on the show you mentioned about a little bit about your upbringing and with mom and with dad. Of course, dad didn't, we saw that dad didn't. You didn't want dad to come to when just yet because you want to get more time to know him and stuff.
Mm.
You're mowing the lawn. You're really doing your bit to almost kind of like make money in a sense as well. I want to be able to understand you even on a more deeper plane. So, because you've given us a nice perspective overall the last few years, taking us all the way back to the very beginning then, one word to describe your upbringing from your perspective.
Oh man, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I'm so thankful for the way that I grew up. I'm incredibly thankful for the way that I grew up. It taught me so much. It allowed me to understand that I could lose everything tomorrow and I'd still have more. I'd still have more than what I grew up with. And now I know how to make it all back. But, I think it's just thankful. I'm extremely thankful to have the childhood that I had.
Break us in a little bit then. What was that upbringing like? Because you shared a little bit on the show.
Yeah.
Mom, at a period of time, went to prison. Dad, obviously, didn't know. So tell us about the upbringing. What was that like? Who did you grow up with then in that sense? What was that like for you growing up?
Yeah. So when I was 3 years old, when my mother went to prison for the first time, I moved in with my grandparents, and my grandparents raised me. And, the one thing that I can say that I had no lack of as a child, we didn't have much when it comes to material things or anything like that. But one thing I didn't lack was love. I had love to the fullest extent. And, that's something once more that I am so incredibly thankful for. It allowed me to, there was never a point in my childhood that I didn't feel loved. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So then for you, never ever feeling loved. What was it like then for you growing up then, knowing that obviously most people, quote unquote, most people have a typical relationship where they have their mother and their father, or some will have mothers, or some will have fathers. What was that like for you then? Did you ever feel that missing presence, knowing that obviously mom's not around and stuff? And then how did that affect you growing up, knowing that there was a difference with your upbringing and other people's?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think early in my childhood, I didn't really realize how much it affected me. I don't think I realized, because, I would still go visit my mother. We went to see her on occasion, and, so I was still able to see her, and I don't think it really started to affect me until she went back to prison the second time. And that's when I, started to feel. She went to prison 3 times in my childhood. And it was one of those things, I think one of the longest things that has affected me into my adult life, is whenever she would go to prison, she would always tell me, she's like, every time we would speak, every time we would see each other, she would always tell me, she's like, hey, honey, like when I get out this time, I'm going to be better. I'm not going to follow that same path. I'm not going to do these things that hurt you. I'm going to be, the mother that you always wanted me to be. And then she would get out, and soon after she would repeat and then go right back to prison. And so I think that was one of the things that affected me most, was just, I think it was probably around 16 years old that my mom got out for the last time. But sadly at that time, I had already kind of given up. I had already given up on her as a mother. And like, at the end of the day, my grandmother, she's always been my mother in my eyes. She raised me from some of my very first thoughts, from my first memories, so that woman is my mother. But yeah, I think growing up without a mom and a dad, were definitely some of those, I definitely felt pain, and I think one of the easier questions is, I mean, I don't necessarily know if it's easier, but one of the things that I experienced right before meeting my father, and I'm probably going to get a little vulnerable here and talk about a part of my life that not everybody accepts, not everybody wants to appreciate how much these things can actually help. But I think as a child, like, there were always moments of my life that I wanted a father. Like I said, I was always athletically inclined. I always wanted to play sports, but I never had the ability. But like, even just having, not having a father to just like go outside and, throw a baseball with, or throw a football with, those things really impacted me growing up. And so one of the craziest things that I think happened in my adult life, and this only happened, I mean, I've known my dad now for, let's see, 3 years, I think, which is crazy. It feels like yesterday. It literally feels like yesterday that I met my dad for the first time. But about 6 months prior to meeting my father, one night I was sitting at home, and I've always, I'd say about 5 years ago, I experimented with psychedelic mushrooms for the first time. And I, like I said, about 6 months before I met my father, I took a very large amount of psychedelic mushrooms, and I just laid on my couch. I laid with my dogs. And, anytime I do something like that, I make sure I go in with a very solid intention, because your intention will lead the path for that journey. And I went into that intention wondering why it was difficult for me to love. Because
that's real.
I've never had, in my adult life, I've never had difficulty loving. I never had that issue. And following a breakup that happened, back, I think I was like maybe 24 years old, 25 years old, something like that. I lost that ability to love. And it was a long time. It was a long time before I was able to love again. And so that experience that night, I sat there with that intention in mind until things started to set in. And I remember looking back into my childhood further than I can remember, personally. Like, I don't like, I remember these moments because they showed up in that experience. But, I looked at myself from above. I looked at myself like as a child in these moments that I missed having a father, that I wish I had somebody to just talk to whenever things were fucking hard. I looked at myself and I watched my child like self go through those emotions that I went through from the time I was a little kid. I watched it, and then it would go to the next one, and I'd watch that, and I'd see myself standing in my yard, throwing a ball up in the air and just like wishing I just had my dad, wishing I had my father, and then it would go to the next one. And there were just so many scenes that it played through that experience that, made me realize how much not having my father really affected me, how much not having that male, love in my life affected me. I had my grandfather, but him and I, we weren't like super, super close
But
like
yeah,
that. He would come to my track
also,
meets. Track was the only thing I was actually able to play, but I want to get back onto the story. I think those experiences, once more, I was like watching myself through that whole, track of my life, that I felt that pain. And then it was like, it's like I closed my eyes, and then it was right back at the very first vision that I had. And I was sitting in my room and I was crying. And then me today, like this version of me, walked into the room. And I sat with myself as a child, and I hugged myself and I told myself that, hey, everything's going to be okay. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how you're feeling. And, that was one of the most profound experiences of my life, because for once I felt the love that I needed from a father. For once I felt that love, and it was right here on my couch. I felt that love. And we went through, once more, I went through each one of those experiences that I needed my father. And it was like I was just watching it from above. And every single one of those experiences, it was like a new part of me was being born. A new part of me was like it was by far one of the most profound experiences of my life. And, I later, found, I was talking with my therapist, and it was like maybe, I don't know, I was talking with her about my experience, and she's like, Josh, do you even understand what you just did? And I was like, I have no idea. And so she told me, she's like, that's called reparenting. When you put yourself back into those experiences and you feel the emotions that you felt in those moments, and then you give yourself the love that you needed in those moments. I had never heard that word before. I never, anything, but like, that's what that experience gave me. And, and then 6 months later, I took a DNA test, because I was curious, like where I'd come from, like I was curious where my family's from. And it came back with one close DNA match of 25%. They showed 25% DNA. And it just so happened to be my aunt. And she reached out to me on the app that I took the test on. And come to find out, she was my brother's sister. And so she put us in contact. And, that's how I met my father for the first time. And so I really believe that I needed that experience. I needed to heal those wounds of not having a father before I could truly accept having my father in my life, even though it wasn't his choice. It wasn't, it's not like he didn't want to be a part of my life. He just didn't know I existed, so yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Because I think that's such a powerful moment when men, especially, we get to share some deep, intimate thoughts that we have and experience that we've gone through. So I really want to appreciate you for opening up and sharing that with me and trusting me with that as well. And I guess I have a question around that as well, around that perspective, which is, you said something and it stopped me in my tracks. You said, at a certain point, in your 20s, you recognized that you couldn't show love. Suddenly, it's like the button just is switched off. You know what I mean? And I want to know, and you kind of said it already, but I still want you to just kind of highlight it so other people who ever listen to this can also, maybe they've gone through something similar. What turned off that love for you? What was happening that the switch just turned off all of a sudden and love is like cut off? What was happening for you?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So at the time I was dating somebody who I was very much in love with. And this was probably, I think it was 2015, 2016. And, at the time I was working two jobs. I was working my job at the state. And then I also picked up a side job bartending, or I was actually like security / bar back / I did everything. Anyways, I picked up that job to allow the girl that I was dating at the time to start working part-time herself. So that way she could focus on getting into med school, because that's really what she wanted to do. And so in order to do that, I picked up more of the bills and stuff like that. So I needed to make more money. Anyways, fast forward a little bit. My grandmother and my grandfather, we had a really big hurricane that hit the Houston area, and my grandparents lost everything in the flood. Their house was completely underwater. And, like the financial situation for my grandparents never got better. And so like that was a big deal, like they didn't have the money to just move into a hotel. They didn't have the money to just, pick up and start life over, And so what did I do? Of course, I brought them to Austin, and they lived in my 1-bedroom apartment with me and my girlfriend. And she was in the middle of, putting all these applications in for med school. And, the reality is that she needed some space. She needed some space to be able to focus. And so she moved in with her parents. We still stayed together. And then, it was like maybe a week. No, it was like maybe a month into living with her parents that she called me and essentially told me that she wanted to break up, that she thought that we were just too different. And I think at that point in my life, I didn't I was working 2 jobs to get by. I didn't have the money, I wasn't in a great space. And so I think in that moment I felt like she left me at one of the hardest points in my life,
Understood.
to that at that time. I felt like she left me whenever all I did was try to support her. I supported her in trying to find, and trying to get into med school and those types of things. And so I don't know, it was just one of those things that just was really jarring for me. It was really jarring. And I was just like, well, if I couldn't trust like this person, then like, how can I trust somebody, going forwards? And it was a really weird scenario because like by the time I was ready to start dating again and stuff, I would start dating and like I felt like the feelings would just never arise.
Nice.
I'd have a really incredible connection with somebody, but it's just like I just couldn't love them. I couldn't love them. I couldn't feel like that feeling of like just unconditional, like that love for somebody. And so, yeah, that's what created that.
Definitely is on that. And I actually totally get it. I think that's a very real response, especially with the background and where you're coming from and what you've experienced. It's not remiss to be in a scenario where the feelings get cut off. And usually that's like the broken trust, can we trust love now? And you're not the only one in a sense of like, you're not alone in this. We've all, not all, but a lot of us have gone through that situation where you just one day just like, all right, I ain't doing this no more. Like this thing is untrustworthy. This thing hurts you. You know what I mean? You give more than you're getting. So I ain't gonna do it no more. But something still compels you to want to still go there until you figure it out and figure out what's the source of this blockage in a sense. So I loved that you shared that as well. Now, of course, I took you a little bit off target in terms of asking because you was making some great progress and talking about your experience with your father as well and finding out who your father was. That is a really powerful experience in itself, right? That you were doing a DNA test and your auntie comes up and then it's now your dad. You find your dad in that space. There's a bit more about that as well because that is an amazing. Well, I'm assuming it's an amazing moment. And how it's come about. So tell us a bit more about that experience, because I think that's a great a story to tell and a great thing to kind of hear and understand.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was like, I was talking to her in the evening, or I was talking to her like kind of like midday throughout the rest of the evening. And, she just asked me a couple of questions. She asked me who my mom was. She asked me who my dad was. And of course I was able to tell her who my mom was, but I wasn't able to tell her who my dad was. And she's like, essentially, she was like, look, like, this is crazy. We have a 25% DNA match, but I have no clue who you are. Like, I have no idea who you are. And so she's like, okay, it came to that evening. She's like, okay, well, I'm going to go do some research. I have 3 brothers. I'm going to talk to them. and I'll get back to you as soon as I know anything. And I woke up the next morning, and the message, I mean, I'm sure I still have it on my DNA app or whatever. The message I got from her was, Josh, I'm fairly certain I'm your aunt. And, I was laying in bed whenever I picked up my phone and read that message, and I immediately knew what that meant. I didn't think, I'll be honest, like the day before, I didn't really think too much into it. I didn't think a whole lot into it. I was just like, okay, like, sure, it's just somebody. I don't know why. I think in the moment, I just didn't realize how much, like 25% when it comes to DNA is. It's one person off of your father or your mother or your brother, or I think, or your brother or something like that. That's how close it has to be for it to be 25%. And I didn't realize that in the moment. And so whenever I read that message, I was just like mind blown. I was like, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to feel. I didn't even know if I responded immediately. I know I walked downstairs, and I'm fairly certain I walked a trench, into my living room right here, because I was just pacing back and forth in my living room. Like, that's all I could do. I was just like, I didn't know, like I said, I didn't know what to feel. Like, I didn't know, like, all I knew is that, something so little as just wanting to find out where I came from was about to, and, also I wanted to go into it without any expectations, because what if this person didn't want to be a part of my life? I didn't want to get my hopes up. I didn't want to, think that, oh, this is going to be great, I get to meet my dad. I didn't want to do any of that. And so I think whenever I was finally able to bring my head together, I started talking with her, and she's like, can I get your phone number? And so I sent her my phone number. She's like, okay, I'm going to send this to your dad, and he's going to reach out to you at some point in time today. I don't know when it's going to be. He was working and stuff. So, essentially I got a call from my dad, and heard his voice for the first time, spoke to him for the first time that day. And I think it was like maybe a week later, he drove down to Austin. He just lives in Houston.
Wow.
So it's like 3 hours away, 2.5 hours. So yeah, he came down to Austin. We spent the weekend together. And it was one of those things that it had a lot of potential to go either direction. Either the guy was going to be great, or he was, or he might not have been, and so I can confidently say and thankfully say that, I'm so thankful that he is the man that is my father, because, that family has welcomed me with open arms. I found out that I had 3 sisters. I have a bunch of nieces and nephews. One of them just spent the summer with us, all kinds of stuff. So it was, I couldn't be more thankful for that experience. Yeah.
How did that change you as a man there? Because obviously, like you said, you had the psychedelics aspect that you had to reparent yourself. You're in therapy, and the therapist has highlighted that. And then you finally physically now meet your actual father. And you guys spend the weekend together. There's a whole new outlook, I guess, on who you are and who that relationship is with your father. How did that change you? How did that transform you in that space then?
That's a tough one to answer, because I think I went into it with such, like I said, I wanted to go into it with no expectations. And so, I think at the end of the day, the biggest realization that came from it was just, I think really what I want to share is just, my father, he's an incredible human. He's such a good-natured person. He texts me every single morning. And that was one of the biggest shocks, I think. outside of like knowing that I was about to meet my father, one of the biggest shocks that it brought was just getting a good morning text every day from my father. Like he sends me a text every single morning. And like I don't text very often. And so there's sometimes a couple of days that I won't even see it. But like when I open it up, there's good morning, son. Good morning, son. I hope you have a good day. Good morning, son. Like happy Friday, you know, like, and I think that that's one of the craziest things that like, it just felt surreal. It just felt like, I don't know. It was like one of those things I was like, is this even real? Like, how is this real? Like not knowing my dad until I was 30 or 31 years old. And then out of nowhere, like I had this man who not only, you know, accepted me, but like is like reaches out to me every day. Like, what is this? I don't know. It's like, I don't know. It's such, you know, it was such a relief, you know, because I went into it with such with so little expectations, you know, to know that I have such an incredible father is I'm so thankful for that, you know. Yeah. I don't know if I really answered your question, but
no, you did.
Yeah.
My brain just tinkers all the time because I think I grew up with two parents, right? But within that space, I always tell my audience, they know, I will speak about the fact that, you know, there was distance between me and my parents, or at least between me and my dad, right? So like I don't get a message every day saying, "Hey, son," you know what I mean? Like there are missed moments with me and my dad in terms of growing up. Maybe some of the key moments I would have wanted him to show up. That doesn't mean he didn't show up at all, but there would have been a lot more moments, football games, stuff like that were important to me that weren't necessarily catered for, which creates that emotional distance at points in time. You know what I mean? And so I think that and I know that obviously I've gone through my period of time of my dad, obviously kind of like, you know, trying to reach out a little bit more. And I remember the feeling of having some of those more reach outs. I actually started getting annoyed. If I'm really honest about it, I started getting annoyed. I started getting annoyed because I felt like in that space, I had already hardened myself to a position of independence. So you reaching out a lot more times is actually frustrating me. You know what I'm saying, Chu? It's frustrating me because like I feel like I'm being boxed in, almost trapped a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Now I feel like I have to respond. I have to talk back when I don't feel like that anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like that train is almost gone. Do you know what I'm saying, Chu? So it's like it created a little bit of an annoyance. I found it difficult to be able to reciprocate those aspects all the time. And then maybe something will happen, and then I'll be like, yeah, that's why I don't want to see. That's why I don't want to have a conversation. That's why you might. And they have their human moment. But sometimes those human moments are like, I'm like, come on. So then if it created more of that distance. So when you were saying it, that's what was going through my head. I was in my head. I was wondering if you have some of those annoyances, almost in a sense, not because the person necessarily is quote unquote bad. It could be, but just rather because you've had to do it on your own for so long. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, I think that that's a really good question because I don't feel that with my father, but I do feel it with my mother. I do feel it with my mother. Yeah, because, you know, like she's tried to come back into my life. She's tried to be a part of my life, and on so many occasions. And it's like, you know, I feel like my mother is like one of those people that as soon as I give her an inch, she'll take a mile. And, you know, it's one of those things that it's just, you know, I really connected with your story, like about your father that you just mentioned, because that's almost exactly how I feel about my mother. Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
But my father, it's a different story. You know, my father, you know, he wasn't not a part of my life because he didn't want to be a part of my life. He didn't have that choice. You know, he didn't know I existed. And I truly believe that if he knew, that wouldn't have never been the case. He would have always been a part of my life, you know? So yeah, I really connect with you on that because that's exactly how I feel, but just about my mother. And it's weird because I want to, you know, there are parts of my life, there are parts of me that like want to move past that because my mother is getting older, you know, and like, I want to believe that she wants to change. I want to believe that but the reality is like all of those false promises growing up, you know, and then, you know, seeing some of her actions not changing. And, you know, it really makes me question her intention, you know, of like, it's like, why do you want to be in my life? Is it because you see that I'm successful? Like, is it because now you're concerned that your lifestyle has brought you to a place that you're now at risk because you're getting older? And now you want to come into my life, but for what? Like, what do you hope to gain out of this? You know, and it's not that I wouldn't give her that chance. It's just, I want to make sure that her intentions are pure, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, because I'm also not here. You know, I truly believe that, you know, it's okay to cut out toxic people in your life.
Yep.
You know, regardless of who they are, you know, but it's up to you if you want to allow that relationship to reform itself, you know. And so there's been moments in my adult life, you know, and recently in my adult life where I've questioned, am I being too tough? Am I being too hard on my mother? You know, am I making it too hard for her to show me that she's changing? You know, but I think, like, really for me, I just want to see the proof in the pudding. I want to see you put in that work, and then I'll open my arms. But until then, I don't necessarily know if I owe that to you. I don't think I owe that to you. So
no, I definitely hear that. And it's funny because obviously Oprah just literally did a video recently actually about parent children separation, that children of the generation are separating from their parents and keeping them at arm's length, and you know, not necessarily engaging in the guilt trip relationship with parents if they're not doing the work. You know what I'm saying to you? And so that aspect of relationship, you're absolutely right, it's understandable. And yeah, it's tough because when people haven't necessarily experienced that, it can be tough for them to understand that you may take that perspective or that stand. So the natural thought process for a lot of people who've had good parents is like, well, if I had my parent, you know, I would give everything, like, especially if they've lost a parent, they're like, if I had a parent back again, I would have it. And it's like, yeah, but you need to have a parent that actually cares about you. Otherwise, it just becomes warfare, and it's very painful. And actually, you're just kind of tearing yourself apart to try and keep a relationship together, which is doing you more damage. So it really does. I understand exactly what you're saying in that particular space. Consistency is necessary.
Absolutely. I mean, there's one thing that it really taught me, and that's what I don't want to repeat, you know. And I think that led to some further, you know, blocks that I had in my life, you know. So, like, whenever Married at First Sight reached out to me, it was honestly probably one of the best moments that they could have ever reached out to me, you know, because I had some really incredible breakthrough, you know, moments on, like, how to communicate effectively, you know, how to talk to my partner effectively. You know, I was able to learn some things that helped me be, you know, in my opinion, a very effective communicator, and, you know, multiple other things that happened, you know, leading up to me being on the show. But one of the biggest things is I always told myself that I never wanted to bring a family into this world, that I never wanted to have a family until I could 100% support that family on my own. You know, and I'm not saying that I would want my wife to not work or anything like that. I want them to do what feels right to them, but I would never want to bring a child into this world if I didn't know that, you know, although I'm extremely thankful for the way that I grew up, I wouldn't want to bring a child into this world if I didn't think that I could provide a better life for them than what I had. And I only mean that in, like, a financial situation, in a comfort situation where we're not moving all the time and that kind of stuff. Because, like I said, one thing that I had no lack of growing up was love. And that's something that I want to carry into my family as well, is just that love, you know. But I also want to bring that stability, you know, because that's what I didn't have, you know.
Well, I love that you segued into that. So let's honor that segue because it's a very nice segue. Married at First Sight, obviously they asked you, they contacted you, all right? They saw and they said, let's get him on. So And because obviously you're in a better place in terms of the fact that your your communication skills are coming into play. You're kind of just taking more control of your life in a sense, right? You're feeling more empowered in that particular space. What was your expectations? Knowing, had you watched Married at First Sight before? Did you know about Married at First Sight before coming to the show? What was your expectation?
I had never even heard of the show. I'd never even heard of the show. It wasn't. So yeah, no, I never watched the show until they reached out to me. And then I actually watched the Nashville season. That was the first season that I watched. And it's crazy because like now I've met Shaq. Like Shaq, he lives here in Austin. He's a cool dude, man. I've hung out with that guy multiple times. He's just a good human. And so, I never watched the show. They actually found me on Instagram and asked me to come in, and went in. I met like 50 of the guys that were potentially being casted for the show. And, sat down with the experts and like talked with the experts. And, that's where I really started to gain a little bit of confidence in their system, because when I first heard about it, I was like, there's no way. There's no way I would ever do this show. There's literally no way. Like, it's not possible. But curiosity kills the cat. And so I ended up going to that first meeting, and that first meeting gave me a lot of confidence. It gave me a lot of confidence that they really put a lot of thought into this. That they really try to match people that are going to work out. And so that's what essentially led me to continuing and just being interested in potentially going on the show. Yeah.
What made you say yes to the project? Because of course, I'm putting my assumption on, you're a good looking man. You make good money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't think it doesn't feel like you're struggling in the dating field. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what made you want to say yes to this process? Because again, I'm sure the dating market was somewhat kind to you. So what made you say yes?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, honestly, whenever, they asked us that question multiple times, like leading up to, some of the questions that they asked us were like, why do you need Married at First Sight to find you a partner? And honestly, the question, my answer to them was, I don't need this. I am perfectly, I am perfectly capable. However, you came to me at, like I said, probably the best time in my life that you could have come to me in. And, in the moment I was like, you know what, this makes a lot of sense. Like, let's at least, I wouldn't say like, whenever they reached out to me, like I said, I was like, there's no way in heck I would ever do this show. But then I continued with the interviews and stuff. I followed through the process, and I was like, okay, like I'm getting a lot more confidence in this. And so, like I said, to answer your question, I didn't need the show to find my partner, but at the same time, I was just like, why not? Why not give this a shot? Why not give this a shot? And so I was like, look, as long as I'm completely, honest with what I want out of a partner, as long as I give them all of the, all the ammunition that they need to try to find the perfect person for me, why not? Like if they match me with somebody who's not it, who's like not what I asked for, who's not like what I was looking for, that's on them. That's not on me. But what if they do put me with the person that matches those things? And so that's essentially where my head was whenever they asked me to be on the show. I said, you know what, like this is the best time. Why not? Find me my person. Help me find my person.
I respect that. And that's honest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You didn't actually need it. You know what I'm saying to you? Like, I respect the honesty in that, because some people would have just said like, oh, like, no, they would have said some kind of story. But the reality is, hey, I didn't need it. You know what I mean? But you brought a process, and I'm buying into the process. The process seems like it could work in your favor. I respect that. You know what I mean? I respect that.
Yep.
Okay. So having obviously bought into that, and let's get into this, because the weddings obviously come about, and you obviously don't know who you're going to get married to. So I got to ask a question then. What did you ask for when they tell? Because obviously they ask that question. They want to get your specifications in terms of like, the intimate interpersonal skills of that person, or the values and the ambitions, goals, and even the physique they want to ask you. So what did you ask for?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a tough question, because when I tell you, like, there was a lot of things that played into my comfortability with saying yes to the show, and one of them was the fact that, I had to take like 3 different psych evaluations. So like that was great. So I felt like, at least they have a good idea of like all of the people who are potentially moving forwards. But I'm so sorry. My brain once more. I kind of got off topic, and now I don't know what.
No, you're talking about I was asking what did you ask for? What were you asking for in terms of pen? You were talking about they do a lot of site tests and everything, that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, so they had us answer probably over 1,000 questions in like a questionnaire type situation. They had us, it was like some there were multiple choice, some you'd have to write it out like what you wanted, but there were so many questions that we had to ask, or that they asked us about like our ideal partner. They asked us about like sexual interests. Like they went as far as like asking like, are you kinky? Like, are you like they asked literally everything.
Deepest.
And so, so whenever it came down to it, I think the top things for me was I just wanted somebody who was driven. I wanted somebody who had, that drive, because it's something that I really learned to like value within my, within myself, is like, I just wanted a partner who could match that drive. And I feel like they did a really good job with that. I feel like they did a really good job with that topic. Cause I do feel like Jalyn is a very driven individual. She wanted to go out there and make something, and so, I feel like they hit the nail on the head with that one. I did tell them that I would want somebody who could go with me to, to these festivals and, Burning Man and all those types of things. I did absolutely tell them that I wanted somebody who shared that. And they definitely flunked the test on that one. Yeah. So, okay. So those were a couple of things. There was, like I said, 1,000 questions that they asked me about like what I was looking for, what I wanted. And yeah.
Now I have a theory. I said this to the ladies as I coach. I said this to the ladies when I'm on TikTok lives, and we have a lot of panel conversations, and they still warn me about this, right? But I always say this one thing: men, and I believe women too, but because we're in 2025 and women are allowed to make choices now. Okay, they're no longer survival mode. Can't do this whole I'm growing to like you physically. Okay, I have that theory in my head. It doesn't work.
You're saying that men can't grow to like a woman physically?
Yeah.
I'm saying that I was understanding.
Yes, I'm saying physically the attraction has to be there. Like if you're having to try and grow it, it's almost like for people you're not going to give your fullest. You know what I mean? Because when you meet a beautiful woman, there's something about it that makes you want to move. When you meet somebody who's not as attractive to you, you kind of have to start forcing yourself to start doing stuff.
Right.
So my real question is,
ask it. Yeah.
Josh. My real question is, when it was revealed to you on the wedding day, was this in alignment with the physical attraction that you required and desired in a partner?
Was she attractive to me?
I mean, you can put it that way too. I mean, you can put it that way too as well. If you want to.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So, I mean, when I first saw Jalyn, I mean, I don't know if it was clear or not, but I was enamored immediately.
Okay, fantastic.
I was enamored immediately with her, and the entire day, like our entire wedding, like it was like love at first sight for me. I'm not gonna lie. It was like I saw her and I was just like, holy hell, like she's hot. Yeah, I was enamored.
I love
completely
that.
enamored. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. We like.
Yeah, I mean, I cried. I cried. I don't know if you could see it, but yeah, I cried at the altar when my wife walked down the altar, like to the altar. I cried. Yeah, so
Okay.
I was, you know, I was definitely very, very attracted to her.
Fantastic. That's good because that means that we can alienate all those kind of aspects. So, obviously, yourself, Jalyn, you're attracted. This is wonderful. You've met someone. They've matched you with somebody who you're actually attracted to. This could actually really work. You know what I'm saying to you now? You know, and you can really start building in that particular space. So, tell me a little bit more then about the relationship that you and Jalyn started building in the very beginning. Like, what was that like for you and your experience of that? Because we saw very early on, you ended up buying a ring as well. So, what was your early experience of Jalyn and yourself in that relationship format? How did you find it being married to Jalyn in the very early doors?
You know, so it's so interesting. So I want to give it like a little bit of behind the scenes understanding. So when we were about to get married, I was under the assumption, because Jalyn and I were the first couple out of everybody to get married. I was under the assumption that we were going to be separated after we got married, and have to wait to see each other again until the honeymoon. So that was, you know, there were 5 weddings, and yeah, I was under the assumption that I was going to have to wait to spend that time with my wife again until the honeymoon. And so I was dreading the fact that we were first. But the reality is Jalyn and I got married, and then we got put in a hotel room together for the next 6 days. And so honestly, Jalyn and I got, you know, I think when it came to like getting to know each other, you know, we got to know each other, you know, like because we were sequestered in a room 24/7 together. You know, from the first day we got married all the way up until, you know, we were together the entire time. And Jalyn and I's connection was really strong, you know, like we had a really genuine connection. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel like once more, I kind of forgot the question that you asked me, but you're muted.
Sorry, I'm muted. So you know, you answered really well. So, what was some of the similarities that you started finding out then? 'Cause 6 days is a long time. You spend time in a hotel for 6 days, you're gonna find out a lot of stuff. So, what was the similarities that you guys started finding out? What did you find out about Jane that you was like, oh, this is similar, we're similar, this is where we're aligning, this is what's aligning with the things that I said I requested from these experts?
You know, they asked us to try not to like dive deep into who we are, you know, because they wanted to get that on camera. They wanted to get like the most genuine, like us getting to know each other on camera. So, you know, I think that Jalyn and I did a fairly good job of just keeping things kind of, you know, somewhat surface level in that experience. So, you know, we were together for 5 or 6 days, and I'm sure that we talked, you know, a good bit about these things. Like we definitely talked about like what we enjoy doing. And, you know, I think it was clear that both of us like being active, you know, but we didn't really get into the weeds, you know, like we didn't really get into like super deep into it until we were on, what's it called? The honeymoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's so for you, obviously, in that experience, it having to obviously kind of hold back maybe some of the deeper stuff. Was that beneficial towards the kind of way you've always done things in relationships, in terms of like started off maybe more lighter that way, or have you always found that, you know, when you normally date people, it's a bit more deeper, you know, because some of us are deep people, you know what I mean?
You know, that's a good question, because I feel like that's, without lack of a better word, I feel like there's a very malleable answer, like, because I am the type of person that, like, if you want to go deep, the first time that we talk, I can go deep with you. I can talk with you. I can, you know, find out like what makes you, you know, but also like, I can also be, you know, a lot less. So it just really depends on the person I'm talking to. If they want to go deep, I can go deep. If they, want to be more surface level, we can say surface level, so I think that I think I'm more one of those people that I like to give you like the real, genuine, like authentic version of who I am. And I think by default, I'm typically a pretty deep human.
Yeah, and that's what I get. So I was wondering how you would have handled not being able to share some of those things, because as we've discussed as well, and obviously know myself as well as quite deep people, then the natural tendency is to be able to talk deeply, because some of those deep things are also an identity of aspect of sharing some of those. I want you to know me early so that if you need to make a choice, let's not waste time. You know what I mean? Like, because if you don't like what you're getting, I'm not physically, but just mentally and emotionally, I like to get those things, come a couple of those things out of the way. So I'm wondering how that would have affected you. So I appreciate you.
I also want to make sure that it's like I'm a very forgetful human. I'm super ADHD, but I'm also like very forgetful. But like this was also like 2 years ago. And so like I remember a lot of the stuff that happened along the ways, but like I feel like when it comes to that, like the reality is we probably did have some, good, solid, deep conversation. I mean, we were together for, like I said, for like 6 days in a hotel room. Like there's probably no way we didn't have at least some of those conversations. But I think for the most part, it didn't really affect me, because I knew that it was just the process, and I could understand, like putting myself in production shoes, like I could understand why it's important for us to get to know each other on film, like why it's important for us to get to know each other in front of the cameras, because otherwise, like you may be like rehashing conversations that you've already had, and it may not bring that same level of energy or that same level of like intimacy that like sharing it for the first time does. And so I think that we just kind of kept that in mind. And it was one of those things where, like if we did get deep on some topics, we'd do our best to just try to, keep some of it, for the cameras. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely hear that. Now, obviously, you early in the show, you ended up, topping up on the ring, as they say. You put a little top up on them things there.
Yeah.
What was getting what made you want to top up on the ring, sir? It was early. What was going on?
That's a really good question. At the end of the day, like I felt a very genuine connection with Jalyn. I felt a very genuine connection, and like I don't know if you saw him, but the rings that we had for the show, they were pathetic. they were pathetic, and it was just I don't know. There's just like maybe I really genuinely cared for her, and something bothered me about having my wife, who I want to put on. I want to treat her like a princess, right? And a princess doesn't wear a tiny band on her finger. And that was my thoughts, and like, I don't know, that was just my thoughts going into it. And so I was just like, one day, honestly, it was like one of those things. I was like walking through through a mall. I was going to get some clothes for the, what's it called? The honeymoon. I keep forgetting that word. Anyways, I was wanting to get some clothes, and I was just like, I walked through and I saw the Hellsberg Diamond store there. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to walk in here. I'm just going to look. And then I saw the diamond, and I was just like, oh man, that's nice. And Jalyn and I had talked about like what kind of, ring she wants or whatever. And so essentially I saw that thing, and I was like, okay, well, let's just go ahead and get it out of the way. Let's go ahead and get it out of the way. And so yeah, I just bought it there on the spot. Picked it up the next day, and yeah, held on to it for a week.
I love that. No, it's nice to see, because of course, the fact that you felt like that needed a top up and needed to express, the fact that, this is how much you mean to me. You mean so much to me that I'm willing to be able to put more value in terms of this. It's not just a rock. It's about the value, right? And you recognize that.
Yeah, and it wasn't even about like how much it cost or anything like that to me. Like I didn't really care how much it cost to me. Like I just wanted to show her that I was committed. You know, it was like, I don't know. It's just, maybe it was a, you know, one of my biggest love languages, gift giving. And so like, to me, it was like, hey, like, I want to show you that I'm serious. I want to show you that, you know, that how I feel is real, you know, and maybe that's not the best way of like, but like I said, that's one of the ways in which I show love. You know, I love to gift experiences. Like when it comes to gifting, I love to gift experiences because it kind of couples the, you know, gifting and the quality time. You know, and so yeah, that's you know, that's essentially what led me to buying the ring for her.
Like I said, I love that, and it's interesting because you said obviously your two love languages. I'm guessing is like I said, you said gifting, and then what, quality time? Those are the two.
I would say quality time comes third. Acts of service are really big. That's probably first. Honestly, I do that naturally every single day.
Okay, no, I'm getting it. Makes sense, you know, and especially the as a service in terms of, you know, wanting to do things, make sure the person taken care of. This is your way of showcasing that love in that space as well. So within obviously the relationship with and the marriage between yourself and Jalyn, you know, you guys obviously there was some great moments. You guys were starting to do some experiences, but one of the obviously the audience's conversation, maybe a little bit later on, reflecting back on the actual show. So I think at the beginning people weren't feeling that, but maybe the amount of experiences that you guys had, and the skydiving, the boat trip, where everyone felt like maybe, you know, you're quite adventurous, she isn't as adventurous. There was some dialogue around, you know, the levels of intensity in terms of some of the experiences. From your perspective, we know you're an adventurous person. What was it like for you and Jalyn getting to know each other and then having to do the experiences? Did you feel like you had to push her a bit more into experiences? Did you feel like you know, that she was pulling you into her experiences? What was that like for you? Because I know you're an adventurous person, so
yeah,
you know.
I feel like some of the experiences that we shared. I feel like she, you know, really dove in and just accepted it and, you know, enjoyed it. I feel like I do feel like, you know, in looking back onto the show, I realized that I probably pushed Jalyn to doing some things that she was a little uncomfortable with, you know? And for that, you know, I do have like some guilt for. I feel bad. You know, I didn't like, first of all, I wanted to always make sure that she felt safe. You know, that was a big thing to me, you know, but I think in a sense, I wanted her to feel that like I would never do anything with her that wouldn't, you know, correlate to me thinking about her safety overall first with everything, you know? So I don't know. It was one of those things. Like I feel like Jalyn, for the most part, leaned in and did these experiences. You know, I do want to touch on one specific topic because I feel like the show kind of didn't really show this side. You know, so the talk with the experts, like the talk that brought up community and those types of things.
Yes.
Jalyn agreed in those moments that she would be okay with me going to festivals and stuff like that completely solo. Right? That's the version that everybody saw. Like, tell me if I'm wrong. Did she ever say in that she wasn't, you know, that she wasn't okay with me doing that?
I don't remember anything like that.
Yeah. So
the beginning,
you know, that was only after I essentially broke down because I felt like, you know, because what they didn't show was Jalyn saying that she didn't want me to do those things, you know, that she wasn't okay with me doing those things, you know,
alone.
But she also didn't want to do them. She also didn't want to go to festivals. She didn't want to go to Burning Man. It wasn't until, and another thing that you don't see in that episode is that the experts leave after essentially telling me that like, hey, Josh, you're married now. Sometimes you have to give up some of the things that you enjoyed before.
I did say that. I didn't like that.
Yeah. So that was the actual reality that happened there is they, I felt like from that experience. And remember earlier, I told you, like, when I found the community, like the EDM community, the Burning Man community, it was the first time in my entire life that I felt like I belonged somewhere. That like, it was the first time I ever felt that. And so the initial conversation with the experts there, where they were like, hey, Josh, like your wife's not comfortable with you doing these things and she doesn't want to do these things. Sometimes in a marriage, you have to compromise and you have to give some things up. And so they left after that. And Jalyn and I were sitting on the couch and they do show this portion. And we're talking about festivals. And I started to break down a little bit. Like I started to feel like, I don't know, it was just one of those moments that I was just like, holy fuck. Like, sorry for the language. Like, I was like, I felt like part of me was being taken away. Part of who I am, part of like what I love was being taken away from me. And I didn't really have, like, I was led to believe that this was just the right thing that I had to do because now I'm married. And so, like that, me essentially breaking down there caused the experts to come back. They came back into the room. And that's, I don't remember exactly how it all happened. I don't remember if the community topic was played first, but that's where they helped me break down. They were like, okay, Josh, like, we see that this is like really hurting you. Like, this is really tough for you. And so essentially they helped me to realize that like the community is what I valued about these things. And, essentially Jalyn was not happy. And I mean, it kind of shows in the thing. You can see her face is definitely not as, because essentially like they saw like why these things meant something to me. And we essentially went back to saying, hey, like, Jalyn, are you actually like this obviously means a lot to him. Can he go to these things without you? And that's when she agreed and said, yeah, you can do this. And I think it was only because she was put on the spot. But I don't think that she really meant it. And that's what hurt. That's what hurt me a lot, because I felt like, she could see like how much these things meant to me. And I feel like in that moment I was shut down, because like when I asked her if she'd be willing to go, she's like, no. Like it was an immediate response. It was just like, no, I'm not going to do that with you. And so that's why you see, like, I'm just like, I don't know. And like, maybe I felt bad here, like now looking at it. Cause I was just like, I don't know. Like I was just like, babe, like, can't you just go once to like see why this matters to me? Like, can't you just go one time to see like why this place means something to me? To see me in like, to see me free, to see me experiencing life like this. Like, can you just go once? And she was just like, no, I'm not. She just had no interest in it at all. And like, that really hurt me. That really hurt me, because I felt like I was in this marriage now that like, I felt like she didn't care to know like what makes me, like, and I think the experts helped identify that like this is part of, like this is still something that I'm curious of in my life, is like, how much do I associate my identity, who I am, to festivals, to Burning Man? How much do I associate my identity, who I am, to those things? And it is something that I have to, it's deep. It's something that I have to break down and find out, like, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. It's a tough one for me, but yeah. So essentially that scene, it's really geared towards, showing that Jalyn was open to me doing these things and was open to me experiencing these things without her, and I read a lot of comments, like an idiot. I shouldn't have read any of them, but anyways, I read a lot of comments and everybody was just like, Josh, she said that you could do it. Like, why do you have to have her doing the same things as you're doing? You know, but that wasn't the premise of the entire conversation. You know, that wasn't the premise of it. And so I didn't leave that conversation feeling like she was really okay with this. Yeah.
So it's interesting. So, I mean, because we discussed this on the panel, and this was actually one of our major debates, not in a bad way. We always have debates on our panels about different perspectives. And I did make the point about why she couldn't go once, right? But I also wondered because now, as you're telling me, I before, obviously, the second time you guys revisit the conversation where you guys on the couch and talking about it before the parents come back in, I wondered, because the original conversation, I wondered why, from your perspective, because it didn't seem like also you had made it as important at the very beginning, and I guess obviously that comes with the discovery, but it also felt like you didn't place importance on Burning Man in the way that you did the second time you had a conversation. So it's like there was both, and this is my own personal thoughts, it felt like both of you also were very polite and not truthful. So like it was very like, you know, we don't want to upset anybody. You know what I mean? Like she not being honest and you're not all the way honest and you're not being all the way honest. And then obviously you had that moment. So I want to know, like, for you then, why is it that it was at that moment, the second time you guys had a conversation, how come the realization comes then? Because this is something that is so important to you, which has been so important to your transformation, your change around, you know what I mean? So I'm wondering for you, not as an attack, but rather just as a kind of understanding of mindset, you know?
Yeah. No, and I would never take anything that you present to me as an attack. Like, I'm here to take accountability. You know, I'm here to grow. I'm here to see, you know, the things that maybe I didn't bring the best version of me to the table. I'm here to hear all of those things because I want to grow from this experience. And so that's a really good question. You know, I think whenever we were on honeymoon and they asked like, hey, would you be okay not going to Burning Man and stuff? You know, I think it was a hard thing for me to say, you know what, like, you know, because the conversation was that like, she'd be okay with me going this time, but like, maybe, you know, maybe next year I wouldn't go or whatever. So I feel like, you know, that first conversation, I feel like maybe I did want to believe that I would be okay not going because I would be happier with, you know, doing things with my wife, you know?
Yeah.
I did want to believe that. And I did want to think that that could be my journey, you know? But it wasn't until I felt like those things were actually being pulled away from me that I realized just how important they actually are to me, you know? Yeah, that's the simple answer for it is I didn't realize until I felt like it was being taken away from me how important it actually was to me.
That's fair.
Yeah.
You guys obviously had a massive conversation about community. Community became a big topic. Why did that become such a big topic for you guys in terms of what community was? Because you had, of course, you're gonna have two different perspectives. Why do you feel like that was such a big talking point?
That conversation was so interesting because like it had us both pulling our hair out. It had us both pulling our hair out because like, you know, I wasn't trying to tell her that her cycle community wasn't community because it is. It is. But in that moment, like when the experts helped me break it down to the basics and say, okay, like Josh, this is what you love about the idiom community and this is what you love about the Burning Man community. I had never felt community before. I'd never felt it. I'd never known what it was. So imagine like taking yourself in kindergarten, right? And putting you in the seat next to somebody like Jalyn at her current age, right? Who, you know, her whole life, she's been a part of community. She played sports growing up. She, you know, has cycles. She's done all these things that like community has always just felt natural. You know, it's always been a part of her life. And then you take me in the kindergarten seat, you know, who's brand new to life. I've never been a part of a community. I've never felt community. I didn't know what community was. I didn't know, like, as silly as it may sound, at 30 years old, I didn't know, like, I didn't know why those things were so important to me until that keyword came up and that realization came up, that I just really appreciate the community. I really appreciate being around people who share that similar interest with me, because this is like probably the third or fourth time I've said this, but like, it was the first time I had ever felt free. And I could only imagine that, like, that's probably a lot of other people's reality as well that were here.
Trust me.
And so, like, being a part of that meant a lot to me. You know, it meant a lot to me. When I say that was the first time that I had ever felt free, that's real. That's real. That is real. That's the first time that I ever felt free, you know, that nobody was looking at me. Nobody was judging me. Nobody was, you know, like, it was the first time that I'd ever felt like I belonged somewhere. And so that conversation was really tough, because, like I said, you take a kid in a kindergarten seat and Jalyn, who's felt community her whole life, and we're just going back and forth about, like, trying to understand, you know, like, it's really just me. Like, I didn't know how to understand what it was. I didn't know. I was like, literally, I was like learning what community actually is, and then trying to think in my life, like, where have I ever felt this before? You know, like I said earlier in the conversation, the only other time that I had ever felt community was in my church youth group. And it makes sense, because I was so involved in my church youth group. I was so involved, and I loved it. I loved my church youth group. And so it makes sense why, when I found a community that made me feel full again, that I was so attached to it, because it was the second time I ever felt it, and the first time in my adult life that I ever felt it. And so I didn't know what it meant until then.
Fun enough, it makes a lot of sense. It's funny you mentioned two words, God and community, because it's something that has been on my mind the last probably like 4 or 5 months, the word community. So when it came up on the show, I was like, damn, is God trying to trigger me and say something to me, about that? Because I think, and my audience kind of know, we talk about attachment styles a lot. Those of us who have an avoidant attachment style are very well versed in soloism. We're very good being alone, and very good at attaching for a temporal time and period, and then detaching again to go about our business. And so sometimes community for us just looks like the ability to be able to flow in and flow out, right? And we live our lives almost like nomads, kind of going from place to place, and we're comfortable because we can always show up for a little while for people, and we blend in nicely. You know what I mean? People love us, like us, and then we can go again about our business, right? But when you're then looking for stable community, people around you that can see you, make you feel seen and heard, and it's consistent, this is not always something that a lot of us have actually experienced. So when you said it, I really did understand where you were coming from, and also the gravity of having to potentially leave that behind and no longer exist in that place because we hadn't actually found a replacement yet. We're now going to have another journey, which was, I didn't even know how I found the first one. So to find a second one would actually be very difficult, because I didn't even know how to find the first one. It just kind of fell on my lap.
I think I said something exactly like that. I was like, I didn't think that, like, this means so much to me. And then, like, trying to find, like, it took me it took me over 30 years to find this one. Like, how am I going to find something so easy? Like, I just wasn't convinced that I was going to do that. Like, I don't know. It was interesting.
What would then, okay, so because you guys look like you guys at the forefront, you guys were the forerunners, right? First few, episodes, we're seeing you guys are the forerunners. You guys are jumping in the water off the boat. You guys are having communication. You lot are talking. You're solving issues. There is an issue. I remember there was one I will come to in a second. The prenup. We want a prenup. Yeah.
Well, hey, I actually want to. I want to take a step back really quick because you were talking about attachment styles.
Yes.
And I'm curious. What you think I am.
So I came to the conclusion that you were a fearful avoidant, which is dysfunctional or disorganized. It's called the same thing, but fearful avoidance. Yes,
okay.
They flex between the anxious and the avoidant attachment style. So yeah, fearful avoidance. What I concluded. Do you know what your?
I would love to deep dive into this. Like, not obviously not right now, but I would love to just talk with you and deep dive
we'll chat. Definitely.
To understand more of what that means. Because I feel like I don't know. I feel like I self-labeled myself as secure. I felt like I was a secure attachment style, but I also understand that I do have avoidant tendencies. So I feel like I'm a secure individual, but I definitely understand that I have avoidant tendencies. Yeah.
You know what's interesting? So obviously I've been coaching the last 2 years. And I'm not a clinician, so anybody who's a clinician, they will do the clinician stuff. I do the coaching stuff. I have, if anybody, they will know who I've coached, right? When I asked fearful avoidance to do the test, many of them come up as secure. Wow. And that's actually how I know they're not. Because when they tell me their story, I'm like, wait, your story doesn't sound like you've secured. So how would you get? So then I recognize, okay, what ends up happening is because a lot of fearful avoidance tend to mask. It's a way, like you have to build a mask. It's what we like, build a character that is able to interact with the world. You build an avatar that securely interacts with the world to keep you safe because of what you've experienced, right? So that character interacts with the world so much that we don't know the individual themselves almost becomes the avatar. So yes, when you answer the questions, you're answering as the avatar. That is the mask. That's what keeps you safe. So now there's almost no indistinguishing between the two. So when they do the test, normally they come up as secure. And I'll tell them, like, it's understandable. I'm not fighting you for it. But when we start unraveling and we start going deeper, you'll see that the fearful avoidant tendencies start to come out. But yeah, a lot of that's what I've experienced as a coach. That make people come up as secure.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's so interesting. And yeah, as soon as you started talking about attachment styles, and I actually did look at some of your videos on YouTube and stuff like that, and I noticed that that is a lot of the stuff that you talk about. And I was actually really curious what you would think, and so I really appreciate that response, and I'd really love to, like I said, to dive deeper with you on that topic. Yeah.
We go chop it up. We go chop it up. I'm dismissive avoidant too, so I ain't gonna judge you not here. Okay, so
right. And I'm not afraid of judgment. It is what it is. You know. Hey.
So I'm with you on that one. So for you then, obviously you guys were talking about community, but then another thing came up, prenup, which I found so interesting, and I guess I had my own personal experience, my own personal thought. When you guys started discussing prenups, I was like, hold on. Because at first, when you said that, obviously you discussed prenups with in fact, let me just ask you, you're here, so I don't even need to speculate.
Yeah, sure.
What was the play with the prenup? Because of course you have a business, you're very successful at a business. I actually understood why a prenup would be needed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so what was your thought process in terms of prenup? What was happening around it? Because I know you spoke about you spoke to your business partner and everything as well. So bring us into your world. Describe what was happening in terms of prenup conversation that you and Jalyn actually had.
So, the casting producer who actually found me, that was actually one of the first things that I asked him. I was like, is there a prenup involved in this experience? Because like, obviously you're marrying a stranger, like that could go really, really bad, really, really quickly. Right. You know, like they could be the type of person that could try to take everything that you own, you know, just because they can, you know? And so like from the very beginning, I was led to believe that there was a legitimate prenup that was going to be with this whole experience. I later found out that wasn't necessarily the case, but in our contract, there was one paragraph that said, hey, whatever you come into this wedding with, into this marriage with, is what you can leave with if you decide that you want to part ways. And that was essentially the gist of that one paragraph, is this big. That was the whole prenup paragraph in our contract. And so, I'd spoken with Peter. Peter he's my business partner. And Peter, he was fairly insistent on me signing a post-nup. So we actually had to do a post-nup. And we talked about it a couple of times. The reality is like, I came to know Jalyn, or, this might sound dumb, right? But like, I got to know Jalyn, and I was just like, I don't have any concerns that this person would try to take any. And I know that like, looking back, I know that was probably dumb. I know that was probably stupid. It's just like, look, like, regardless of if you know this person or not, like, sometimes things happen, and, it's better to be protected than not. And I also want to touch on the fact that Jalyn never had a problem with signing a post-nup. She never had a problem with that. She was completely understanding and supportive, and was just like, let's just get this done. Like, this doesn't even need to be a conversation. Like, let's just do it. And so, like, she never had a concern about signing the prenup, or like my intentions behind wanting a prenup or anything like that. She was always extremely supportive and understanding as to why that would be a concern. I was the one that was just like, oh, well, now that I know who you are, now that I'm like getting to know who you are, I'm really not worried about it. The reality is that we actually did still proceed with like, they filmed it and everything of us doing the post-nup, right?
Okay.
So we got everything put into the post-nup and everything, but we just never got it signed. We never took it to a lawyer or whatever to get it actually signed and finalized. So we did create it. We just never got it finalized.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you created it, but never finalized it.
Yeah. But the show, they didn't show that. It was just a scene that they cut, I think. Because, moving to Peacock, they had to cut not only the length of each episode in half, but the entire season in half. So you really got a quarter of what you would have if it played out regularly. That's the crazy part about this. It's like, there's so much that went into this whole, we filmed for 28 episodes. We filmed for content for 28 episodes or whatever, but 28 2-hour episode. And we got 13, right? I think 13 1-hour episodes.
Why did it? Is it intentional they cut it down? Because they usually have it longer.
It was the move to Peacock. At least that's what I think. Yeah, it was the move to Peacock that they had to change, that they had to update how they did things. And I think that that's also why our season got pushed out so long, because our season got pushed way out. Like, we should have played. Like, I think whenever we were in this process, I think they were telling us that like our season would be airing in like October of 24, and it didn't air until November of 25.
Oh wait, this is 2 years old.
Yeah, we filmed this 2 years ago, man. We got married February 14th, February 4th. I'm almost positive February 14th of 2024. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
So wait, was a reunion also shot closely after, or was it shot recently?
No, the reunion was 3 weeks ago.
Oh, so generally was for okay. So wow. So you generally have had a long time in between.
Jalyn and I split. Yeah, and Jalyn and I split in July.
Wow.
So we were together for a year and a half. We were together a year after filming ended. Yeah, because filming ended in May of 24. We split July of 25.
Makes sense. Okay, so a lot of time. Wow. Okay, a lot of time has passed in between that time. Okay, it's cool. I get it.
Yeah.
With obviously the prenuptial conversation, then, because obviously you said now that it being stupid and silly. I didn't necessarily think it was stupid and silly. You know what I'm saying? I'm intrigued more in terms of the mindset, because I get it. You said obviously you felt like you knew her now and you trusted her. I'm wondering, Michael. If is it a thing for you, Josh, to trust people too easily?
I feel like it depends on. I feel like it depends on where they are in my life. Like, I don't necessarily trust people in business too soon, but I feel like when I get to know people on an intimate level, on a deeper level, like who you are as a person, like what makes you you, I think it allows me to trust people easier once I get to know them in that area. But like, say in business or something, like I'm probably not, like, unless we're, going on a trip together or something, like I may not get to know you to that level. And I guess that really, like reflecting on that specific statement, I guess that's why, like, I take, we take our employees on a trip every year. We go to like Mexico or something. And it's my favorite trip of the year because it's like finally my moment to sit with each one of them and just catch up, to like catch up on like I stay pretty involved in like understanding like what's going on in their lives and stuff like that. But it's finally my moment to like really connect with them and like find out like, especially with like some of our new reps, like, hey, like what makes you you? Like what makes you, and I don't know. It's like, I feel like in business, it's harder for me to get there because it's like less opportunity. But like when it comes to like spending that time with a person, like with somebody that that you are giving an intimate version of you to, I feel like I definitely learn to trust that individual or learn not to trust that individual very quickly. I'm one of those people that I typically make an assumption of like of your character fairly quick. And so that essentially, I feel like it's been a long time since I've explained like how I trust people. But like essentially it's like a sliding scale, right? It's like I get to know you and I get to talk to you, and like how I create that initial thought of you is like how much I'll trust, like how much I can give to you, immediately. But then like if it depends on like what you give to me, it depends on how vulnerable you can be with me. It depends on how real you can be with me. Because I feel like I can see through bullshit really easily. I feel like I can see right through people, especially if I'm talking to them on that type of, on that wavelength. And so, yeah, I feel like I do trust people really easily, but I also feel like I also can not trust you just as easily. It depends on the human that you are. It depends on who you are. Yeah.
Makes sense. I get it. So then, moving on that scale of obviously the events that happened between yourself and Jalyn, there's one that obviously stirred a lot of conversation between the audience, and that was the ex situation. Because we were all stumped, including myself, we were all stumped as to, the situation of the ex. So before I petition any questions, put them forward to you, I want to know from your perspective, what was happening around the ex situation? Because was that the first time you guys actually had the conversation about what we're doing with exes and the boundaries on that task? Or is this something that was rehashed in regards to how you guys discussed exes and boundaries of exes and stuff like that?
Right. I'm not sure if it's my connection or if it's your connection.
Oh, might be a little bit
but you're
delayed.
freezing a lot. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know if it's my connection or your connection.
I can see it's
Yeah,
delayed.
there's a lag going on.
It's definitely a lag, yeah.
But anyways, I can still answer the question. Yeah, like right now it shows that you're muted, but I could hear you talk. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I just didn't know if it was me. I didn't want to start talking and then like I'd have to re-say it. But if you can hear me clearly, blurry. Then I guess that's what matters.
You're looking blurry.
Am I looking blurry? Oh, my internet shows stuff. My internet seems like it's solid.
I tell you what, if you pop out,
you look clear to me, but I look blurry to you, clear, so it's probably my connection. You look blurry to me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So, if you pop out, you can pop out and pop back
in.
What? If you pop out and pop back in, it should be okay.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll put back out and come back in again. Good lad, good conversation, man. This is really powerful. Loving the self-awareness as well. We're having a really good chop up conversation as well, and I think it's very much insightful in regards to the experiences on Married at First Sight. But yeah, no, this is good. This is good. How are you audience finding it? He's gonna come back in a second, I promise you. He'll come back in a second. How are you lot finding it? And let us know in the chat as well. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Can you hear me?
It's good.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh man,
You can hear me?
I don't know what's going on. Like I
Is
said, I
it
don't know
delayed
if
for
it's
you?
you or me. Huh?
Is it delayed for you?
Yeah, it's delayed for me. It shows, I mean, it's super laggy on your end, and even your voice is pretty delayed.
Okay.
It might
So
be
I'll tell
better
you
now.
what. Yeah,
Okay,
I
there
can
we
hear you
go.
clearly.
Okay,
I
it's
can see you
going good
clearly.
now.
Oh, it's going
Okay,
good.
yeah.
Be back.
Okay, it might be better now.
You know what? Sometimes that happens. Passing wins. All right.
Right.
But yeah, sorry. What was he saying? Yes, I was just asking about the X situation. What happened? And was it a case of, was this the first time you guys had discussed the X boundaries, or was this a rehashing of it because it had to be on camera? Like, what was it? What was happening with this situation, the X situation, for you guys talking?
Yeah. So to my recollection, it was the first conversation that we had whenever Dr. Pia, whenever we were doing the, back to back and we were walking away. That was the first conversation to my recollection of X's at all. And I was fully on board, like right then and there. Like, I don't know, I'm one of those people that like look, like one of the things in my business, like one of the things that we say is, if you say something, mean it. Do as you say as you do. So when I was in that scene with Jalyn, I was just like, I'll do it right now. Like, I have no problem. Like, I'll literally unfollow her right now. They were like, no, like, don't do it right now. Just do it after. Like, it's no big deal. Like, you can do it later. Once more, I'm an extremely forgetful human. If it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. And that's just, I mean, I'm not trying to use that as an excuse by any means, but that's the reality. That's the reality. I'm just an extremely forgetful human. I really and truly meant to unfollow my ex as soon as we finished with that situation. And like, I want to touch on that. Like, it's not like me and my ex were like the best of friends and like talking all the time. We had one conversation after Jalyn and I, got married, and she knew that I was going on the show and everything. Like, her and I's relationship was 100% platonic, 100% platonic. And so whenever it came time to, like the conversation that we had whenever Jalyn and I got married, she reached out. She's like, are you married yet? Like, how is it? Like, are you happy? I have so many questions. Like, it was like, she was just like, she was showing genuine like interest. Like, there was nothing there, emotionally outside of a friendship. And so like, whenever the whole like plot thickens about, Josh still talks to his ex and all that kind of nonsense, it was, I mean, and like Jalyn saw this. Like, I showed Jalyn my phone. I was like, look, you can take this. I have nothing to hide from you. Like, look at my phone. Like, if you want to know what we talk about, like, here it is. Look at it. Here, like, look at the social media, look at everything. The only thing that my ex sent me was like a funny video of like a lab doing something. It's like a dog doing something funny or something like that. And that was the only thing from like when we got married, like that was after we got married. That was the only thing that she sent me on social media. And then, like I said, the text messages, that's all it was. And Jalyn saw all of it. And so, so yes, that was the first conversation that we had about the exes. Then a couple of days goes by, we went out to dinner. We went out to ramen that night. We ate our food. We were having a great night. Right? We leave the restaurant. We had to stop at Target to pick up something. So we stop at Target. And while we're still sitting in the car, she said, she's like, hey, I just want to ask, like, have you unfollowed your ex yet? And I, for a second, I panicked and I told her yes. And I told her yes whenever I hadn't. And I knew I hadn't. And so I told her yes. And she looked at me. She's like, "Are you sure?" I think she said, like, "Are you sure?" Or like, or she like said, "Or you can be honest with me," or something like that. And I was just like, "I'm sorry. I lied to you. I haven't unfollowed her yet. I lied, but I really and truly 100% was just like, okay, like if I get away with this little white lie, right? The first thing I'm going to do when I get the opportunity is I'm going to unfollow my ex." And so like the intention wasn't to wasn't like lie to her to like make her distrust me. I lied because, like I said, I panicked in the moment, and I, maybe it was from some baggage from a prior relationship, thinking that she was going to be upset if I told her. The thing is with Jalyn is she always tried to give me that space to know that, like, hey, like I'm going to respond. Like she wasn't the type to like respond and be angry and stuff like that. So like I should have given her that. I should have given her that respect and understood that she wasn't going to like jump my ass over this, but in the moment I felt like, I don't know. I just felt like it was just one of those things. I just answered too quickly. And because of that, it threw a huge wrench in our relationship. And, I still regret the way that I responded that day. But the beauty of it is that, I recognized a pattern in that moment. And, that's something that I had done in the past, and like sometimes you get away with it and sometimes you don't, right? In this moment, I didn't get away with it. And so what it allowed me to do is be aware of something that I've done in the past and that I had still continued to do in that moment. And so essentially for me to move past or break a pattern, I have to create a process that allows me to, that essentially allows me to relate the feeling that I'm feeling in this moment of discomfort to that pattern. So that way I can recognize it and feel that emotion whenever this pattern comes back up. So like say if something else was to come back up, it would allow me to sit in it for a second and say, okay, Josh, the last time you did this and you panic responded, you really hurt your relationship. You really hurt this person that you care about. It allows me to feel that emotion again, which obviously doesn't feel good. And it allows me to then change it allows me to think through it before I just give a panic response. And so that was what came from that experience. It was really tough and I'm not proud of it, but I am proud of the fact that I was able to look at it, identify that it's a pattern, and put something into place that actually helps me move forward in life, because that wasn't serving me. It wasn't doing any good. And so I was able to recognize it and move forwards with it, put something in place that allows me to not repeat that again. But that was the extent of the lie and the back and what the camera didn't catch, In
that space, obviously the lie and of course the panic, right? The question I have is, what were you panicking for? What were you afraid of?
Yeah. I was afraid that she was going to be really upset. I was afraid that she was going to be upset. And then if I hadn't unfollowed my ex, that she was going to think that there was still something there, or, I was just like, my mind went into this like immediate area that was just like, it's like, she's not going to be happy about this. Like, she's not going to be happy about this. It's going to, it's going to really bother her, And so like the intention behind it was pure. The intention was like, okay, like I'm going to immediately resolve this issue as soon as I have the opportunity. Like this, the second I have the opportunity, I'm going to resolve this issue. I'm not going to forget again. And so the intention was pure, but the delivery was poor.
Okay. I want to throw a spanner in the works.
I should have been a better person in that scenario.
That's cool.
Huh?
I mean, listen, we've all told lies and all done some stuff, so I'm not shooting you. I want to throw a spanner in the works. I want to see if we'll have a conversation at that level. Some may say, but I'm gonna say, were you testing Jalyn's love for you? In the sense of, I know you said you forgot, right? But I'm gonna throw some spanner in the works here. Were you testing Jalyn's love for you? Because something that I've witnessed with people, and even including myself, is that sometimes we can test people with scenarios like this, right? So you've got an ex you have on your social media, you don't delete them. It should have been done before you went into a relationship, by the way. I don't know, you know, most of us would have deleted, but you kept it cool. You're in a relationship now, you're married, right? We haven't had a discussion around it, okay? And we still following them in a sense, right? Then obviously we have a conversation about exes. We don't then remove them, we forget, right? In that we forget something that's really important to our partner, and then now the situation comes back up again, and we're forced into a lie because we're now afraid of their abandonment. I'm asking, was this a test to see if Jalyn really will care about you when this scenario comes round again?
You mean like, did I intentionally not follow my ex to test Jalyn's love for me? Or did I keep my ex around to test Jalyn's love for me? No, it really wasn't that deep for me. It really wasn't that deep for me. I really and truly like she was really and truly just a platonic friend. Like we were just friends. And I didn't think of it like me and this girl like split up like a long time ago. A long time before this. Like it wasn't like it was a recent ex, or it wasn't even like within the year. You know, it was a long time, and like her and I didn't speak for a long time, and then like we randomly started talking, and it was purely platonic. And so like it really isn't that deep. You know, it was never like you know, like let me see what I can get out of Jalyn. You know, it was nothing like that. Like honestly, like I had zero motive to like try to like test our relationship in that kind of manner. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, so how did Jalyn then take it then? Because obviously once she found out that you were lying, what was the aftermath of that situation with the ex situation and Jalyn? How did she handle it? Because she looked like she was affected by it quite a bit. What was the aftermath for you and her in the relationship after that ex situation?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I mean, it definitely immediately put a wrench in things for sure. It definitely immediately put a wrench in things, and you know, I still feel like this this experience, which you know, I have tried my best to like put myself in her shoes and understand like why this did what it did, but I feel like this experience caused Jalyn to be, you know, different towards me. And that lasted for a long time. You know, it lasted for a long time. I feel like that one thing was held, you know, over my head for a long time. And once I don't it's lagging again. I don't know if you can hear me just fine or not.
We hear you good.
I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me? Huh?
Yep.
It's lagging so bad. I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, it lags, but we can hear you though, and we see you, but we hear you.
It's good.
Yeah, we still hear you, so you're good.
Okay. I forget. Okay, I forget where I left that.
You said about I was asking about the Jalyn aftermath, and you said about she held it for a little while, held it against you for a little while.
Oh yeah, yeah. So essentially, it threw a wrench into our relationship. We talked through this on camera. We talked through this with the experts. We talked about this, and you know, I think I think it was Pastor Cal that we were talking to about this, and essentially he came down to it. He's just like, look, like, we all do this. Like, it's not like this isn't something that happens on occasion, but what matters is that, Josh has taken accountability for his actions, understood that it was wrong, and then has also gone the extra mile. For me, like, the reason I had to create these processes and procedures in my brain of how to avoid doing something like this again is because if I just say, hey, I'm not going to do that again, like anybody can say that they're just not going to do it again, but that's simple. It's like this issue is deeper than that. And so to recognize that it's a pattern, he was just like, for Josh to recognize that it's a pattern and to put something into place to help himself avoid this. He's like, Jalyn, you either have to let it go, like he's like, you have to, like either learn to trust him again, like give him that trust or, I can't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I don't know. I felt like that lie once, I'm here to take accountability and, I wasn't right there. I wasn't right there. I acted out of fear, and we all know that doesn't always work in your favor. And, but, I was there to show up the very next day to say, hey, look, this is how I'm going to avoid ever doing this to you again. I appreciate you. I love you. I care about you. And I want to make sure that I never hurt you like this ever again. And so, I did my best to give her that comfort and that safety that, like, hey, like, I understand how detrimental this was, but I'm here to make it right. But I feel like it was months and months and months before I ever moved past that. Before that was ever like taken off of my shoulders. It was months down the road. So, it was definitely something that, it created turmoil, it created turmoil in our relationship, even post decision day, like this, like she didn't let me live this down until after decision day. It was like, I mean, it was probably, it was a long time, and I felt like I showed up and like, I tried to give her everything to trust me, and it just wasn't there. She just didn't trust me. Which, like I said, I putting myself in her shoes, like I can understand, but like, I'm also not trying to create a, excuse here, but like, it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, in my opinion, like the whole situation, it's not like I was like lying to her and like going and seeing and hanging out with my ex. Like, if I was doing something like that, like, I get it, but like the lie in itself, I mean, it wasn't like my response was the worst part about it. My response was the worst part about it. I should have trusted in her enough that she wasn't going to freak out on me. But in the moment, like, I just freaked out, and I was just like, I have to, like, I didn't know what to do, and so I panic responded. And so, yeah, like that was tough, like I don't really know what else to say on it. I felt like the repercussions for that were really tough. And like, please tell me, like, please, like, speak to me, like, be real with me, like, tell me. It's like, no, Josh, like, her response, even months after the fact, wasn't a lot, like, I don't know. But in my mind, it's just like, if she gave me that same thing and like took the accountability and did the things that I did to make her feel safe again, like, I would be able to say, like, okay, hey, this was just a mistake. This was just a mistake. And you've you've obviously put in the work to try to avoid making that mistake again, and I appreciate that. And, I trust you, but I don't know. I felt like, it was just one of those things that lasted far longer and was more intense than, yeah. And it created a real ripple in our relationship. Like it affected us sexually. It affected us sexually. It affected us like how deep we were able to connect with each other. It affected us in a lot of ways. So it was a major, major roadblock.
What was she missing? What did she say that she was missing from you in order to get herself back to a place of trust?
I don't think that conversation ever really happened. I don't think, like, I think whenever Pastor Cal came in, like, I think it was like trying to help her get over that road bump. And I don't think that answer ever came out. Like, it was just like, she just couldn't trust me. Yeah. But I mean, obviously that answer exists. Like there was an answer to that, but I don't know if we ever got it. But I was completely, like, she had my phone password and everything. Like, I had nothing to hide from her. Like, she could have looked through my phone at any given time and I would have been perfectly fine with it.
Was there any other incidents that were similar to that in terms of there being maybe a initial response and then kind of the response not following suit? So for instance, like the X situation where you say, I've done something, but I haven't done something, right? Was there another situation in your relationship where there was something similar?
Not that I can remember. Not that I can remember. I'm not saying that it didn't happen, but not that I can remember as of this moment now.
I think
like whenever we finally moved past that, like the conversation that we had about it, was still tied to the X situation, was still tied to the lie. So I don't believe that there was anything that happened after that would have caused it to like continue the tumble, I think it was literally just that one conversation.
So here's my thought process. There is obviously a few moving pieces, right? Number one, because obviously Jalyn has also gone through past experiences of infidelity herself and witnessed her father also as well being infidelitous as well, right? Any lie is now a form of betrayal. So this actually hits much deeper for her own insecurity because of what she's witnessed and what she's seen. And because obviously the lie in this particular circumstances is also in regards to another woman, this is going to really hit home on the deepest plane. Now, the reason why I believe people struggle to recover from situations like this is because the situation was actually never resolved, meaning the offended party never got the answer that they actually required from the person who offended. And the answer oftentimes isn't just what the person said, it's often a change of behaviors. Let me give an example. A lot of times men will say, for instance, they don't want their girl giving their number out, even if they're kind of afraid. Just say no to a man. What they're really saying is the girl that they're with, they recognize that she has bad boundaries. Right? They recognize she has bad boundaries. The answer of saying don't give out your number is only a bandage on someone that needs stitches. What they're really describing is bad boundaries, and they can't trust. What I think we're hearing from what Jalyn struggled with you is that she, whether she says it or not, I don't know, is that this was more than just a lie. It was a deceit and betrayal, and there's a pattern for her. Right? So until that pattern has been changed, she can't trust that the pattern, she can't trust you enough to be able to give herself back wholly in the same way. So she needed something from you in order to be able to trust that this
Right.
generally was a change of behavior, which is why I asked, was there anything else that she, because her saying, oh, and I say in the sense of, because when she said, have you like, have you removed the X or whatever, when women say certain terms like, have you deleted it, they already know if you have or haven't. They're now waiting to see if you're going to lie. So then that is almost like the test in a sense to kind of see, is he going to be true about it? So there is something for her in terms of between yourself and her. The way she's looking at it is something was not fulfilled. Something was not given enough so she can be able to kind of recover in that space. And I think it's because also the answer you gave, I'm going to be real honest with you, Josh.
Yeah,
As
be honest.
somebody,
Yeah.
as somebody who has had bad boundaries, has had exes, has had friends, as somebody who has also played around in the field, had other women do things with the exes and stuff like that, and used me in certain ways, it's hard for me to buy your reasoning that you forgot. I'm just going to keep it a buck with you. It's hard for me to buy it, right? If it's hard for me to buy it,
I understand.
I can guarantee.
Yeah, I totally understand.
Do you know what I mean? I can guarantee she's not buying it, because here's my thing.
Right.
Something so important, which affects the nucleus of this relationship, right? Where there's now an external party, it can't be forgotten. It should be the first thing that after we've discussed this, it should be the first thing you go and do and cancel it. It should be the first thing. So when someone says they forget, you can say you forgot and then be like, all right, cool. The person will be like, all right, cool, I'll let it go. In the back of the mind, they're like, there's no way you forgot. And that means now I have to look at you differently, because instead of just saying, and this is what my head is saying, I'm just gonna tell you what my head is saying. Instead of just saying, do you know what, can I be honest with you? I have a fear of letting my ex go. I have a fear of abandonment. I have a fear of, you know what, me and her have really been really cool. I don't want to break that relationship up. Then the person can go, oh, I don't grieve it, but I can get it. Then I can accept that. Then now it makes sense why you lied, because it's like, this is the reason. But when you say I forgot, and then there's a lie on top of it, what it says is you didn't forget, and that's why you lied. You didn't forget, and now you were being confronted, and now the lie's coming up. So it feels like that. I'm not saying that's what it necessarily is, but I'm just saying I can understand from her perspective.
Of course, right. Yeah.
What process for her? She ain't going never. She's gonna be never going to trust, because in my head I'm like, how do you forget that? You know what I mean?
Right. And I can totally appreciate and understand that response and that and that mindset. I can totally understand that. Like and I could see myself feeling the same way over something that means a lot to me. And so I think, and this is just me trying to break it down to me, trying to go into that moment and understand, maybe to me, that moment didn't carry the same weight as it did to her. Like the conversation with Pia, maybe to me, it didn't carry the same weight as it did to her. And that's the only thing that I could think of, because and maybe that's just because I knew the relationship between my ex and I. And it was like, it's like, okay, it's like, it's not a big deal. It's like, sure, may I be sad that I'm not able to say, hey, we can't really communicate anymore because of my marriage, because it was one of those things that it just had to happen. Like there couldn't be a conversation about it. And I'm not talking about between me and Jalyn, I'm talking about between me and my ex. And so I don't know, like, I think that might be the disconnect there, is like, to me, it's like, I knew that it was a harmless relationship, and like, maybe I left that, because like I said, in the moment, I really and truly would. And I was beginning to walk over to my phone to grab my phone to do it right then and there. And I really would have done it right then and there. It was not a problem for me, like nothing to me in that moment was more important than my relationship with Jalyn, like nothing to me, like an ex, like a friendship or, a relationship of like, like if she was trying to get me to disconnect with my best friend, that would be a problem. This was not a problem for me. It wasn't a problem for me to disconnect from my ex. Is literally and I can, like I said, I understand where you're coming from, and like, you know, thinking from your perspective, like if this was a huge deal to her, you know, that like, hey, this is a, you know, I also didn't really leave that conversation thinking that my friendship with my ex was like a groundbreaking difficulty with our relationship. Like I didn't leave that conversation with that. I just left that like saying like, okay, I just got to unfollow my ex. Like it wasn't like, hey, you have to unfollow your ex or I'm not going to feel secure with you. Because I think if that was the conversation, I think that would have created the feeling that you're relaying to me. It's just like, okay, like, holy shit, I have to unfollow my ex because I'm making Jalyn not feel secure, you know? And if that's the case, I have to make that change. Like, that's like a no brainer. And so I think, you know, I think that's the best way for me to like really break down that topic and understand like, yeah, I think that that's the best way of explaining, but I really and truly like whether you believe me or not is completely up to you. But I really and truly did just leave that scenario and I just forgot. Like I forgot. And when I tell you, like, if it doesn't exist on my calendar, it doesn't exist to me. Like, and that's like I've had to learn. Like organization is like probably the least. I'm terrible. I'm not organized. I'm not an organized human. And that's why I was asking you even leading up to this interview. Like it's like saying, hey, is this a Zoom or is this like I didn't know if you were going to send me an invite. I didn't know like how it was going to work. And so like I'm just, like I said, I'm not an organized person. And so, yeah, I left that conversation and I really and truly forgot.
So I love that you shared that. So you said some really interesting terms, and I won't spend too long on this because, of course, there's other things we need to address. But you said some really interesting things, and I say it's interesting because, and maybe this is a conversation we'll have after more of a case, is that, and it may, and this is why I said that it's the I forgot is harder to believe. What you actually shared is more plausible for the ear. Just saying, just in general. Not saying that it is, but I'm saying it's more plausible because what you then explained is this. What you actually said was this. This is what we heard. What we heard was, you know what? It almost sounded as if she didn't actually make it clear that this is a important subject for her. Like this is really important. Like her not feeling safe would have made alarm bells ring in your head that this needs to be done now. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Game over. Game over.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you would have gone over, you would have sorted it out right there and then, right? So priority would have kicked in that particular moment. And that's why I asked earlier on about the testing. But then when I say testing, it doesn't always, the question I knew you weren't going to say, yes, you test, of course, because most people are not testing from a conscious level. Testing comes oftentimes from a subconscious level. So for instance, when we're saying about this scenario of the ex situation, right? You said something really powerful. You said, if she had told you, like, if she had made it really important, then it would have been like, I know she really cares about this situation, almost in a sense. And sometimes what we end up doing is testing how much people care. And we do that sometimes even negligence. Sometimes we do that with absent-mindedness. Sometimes we do that with even an aspect of forgetfulness, right? So we can actually genuinely forget, but not recognize that comes from the trauma of actually trying to prove for trustworthiness with other party. So in this scenario, when you said about, it would have made sense for you almost in a sense to respond when, you know, if she had made it like really important in that moment, I think also then begins where there's going to be a disparity between you and Jalyn. The reason why I say that is because I think most people would understand that if they said, get rid of the ex, block him or remove him, whichever one, right? Or I'm not comfortable with the ex, it would immediately send a signal that I don't need to be talking to my ex. Let me go and do this now and get rid of them and then move on. It would immediately send that signal to most people. But for you, it didn't send that signal, which means the information that's got passed, you need it presented in a particular way, which is why I said that the forgetfulness doesn't make sense for a lot of us because that's not the normal thought process. For you, you needed to have the person highlight the priority for them to make it sense for you. And that's why I said it's gonna be hard for her to understand that, and she can't trust that because that's never been explained. That can't be explained because, again, I think your mind works in a very different way. And I can understand why her mind is going to think to herself, you're about to start betraying me, because these are the patterns of somebody who's about to betray you. But I think that if we were to have more time outside of this space and we had a real deeper conversation, I think I'll be able to connect dots for you as to what happened in that moment. That whilst I don't believe you were necessarily trying to deceive her. I don't think you were trying to get one up on her. I don't think you were trying to get back with your ex. I actually don't think you're trying to do those things. But I do believe the subconscious level of security and safety played a massive role in how the ex is still in your life. There is some level of emotional safety of having someone there. And that doesn't mean you're going to do anything with them. It's just, they're just there, right? It's almost like a safety net, but it doesn't mean you're going to do anything with them again.
Right.
Again, we're not going there. So, because you said for you, it's not a big deal. And that is a priority issue, as in, why does it not prioritize for you in your mind why the ex is not a priority? Why, you know what I mean? Like, so then that then leads to the actions of forgetfulness and then not actually immediately, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I knew I was really excited for this conversation with you because I really appreciate your ability to, put yourself into other shoes and really explain that, because I honestly, like you said, connecting the dots a second ago. And the reality is like, I probably didn't even understand like that's what it was that, I probably didn't even understand that that's why I did what I did, or, I can't remember what, sorry, my brain, sometimes I just forget my train of thought, but like, I probably didn't even understand. Sorry, it's frustrating to me because I'm trying to think of. It's a really good thought, but I can't think of what I'm trying to say. Maybe I'll think back to it here in a second.
If it comes to you, interrupt. Don't worry. If it comes to you, interrupt. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
If it comes to you, you can interrupt. It's not a problem. If it comes back to you, just let me know, and I'll stop him, or you can go back to that. No worries at all. Okay, so we'll leave the X situation alone.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll leave the X situation alone.
Yeah, I just
I'm really intrigued.
Something with connecting the dots, and
no, I
think there's a lag from me to you.
The lag. Okay. No worries at all. No worries at all. We'll retrace that in a second or two. What I was gonna say is, I'm intrigued to find out what happened with the sit down and the nuptials that you guys were rewriting, the letters you had to rewrite to each other again, because you had a moment of frustration when you couldn't write you didn't want to share it with Jalyn, and there was a disconnect between you and Jalyn in that moment because she had written something, she wanted to share it, but you didn't want to share it at that point in time. And I started thinking, is he self-sabotaging? What's going on here? Like, I want to know what was going on what was happening for you in that moment.
Yeah.
Why is it that you couldn't share that with Jalyn?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. I'm actually going to walk away for a second because I intended on doing this research before, but I'm fairly positive I actually have the notebook that I actually wrote those things in. Let me check really quick. I'm fairly positive it's in the notebook that I carry in this laptop bag, because I did write a lot. I wrote like at least, I'd say probably a half to 3/4 of a page, about my, in response to that. And so I'm going to go see if it's there really quick. And if it is, then I'll grab it. If it's not, then I'll just be right back. I'm also going to get some more water as well.
No worries. Do your thing. No worries at all. Man, this is an interesting conversation. I know a lot of people have their own opinions and stuff, but this is really interesting. And I'll tell you why it's interesting, because a lot of times when I coach, it's sometimes difficult it's difficult for everyone sometimes when you're trying to really unpack certain things live in a moment. And sometimes you need a bit of a moment to kind of just process it. So I'm loving the conversation. I'm loving how we're breaking things down and really going deeper with some of the aspects that happen on the show. I think it's important to have deep conversations. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he's got to say. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I'm trying to see if I can find this notebook anywhere.
You're good, bro.
No, I found 3 different notebooks and none of them were the one that had it in it.
Oh, damn,
But if I can
sorry.
find it, like, I'm more than open to sharing what I did write.
You're good.
But yeah, I mean, a little bit of backstory. I actually am dyslexic, and I mean, I feel like, I mean, I failed first grade because of it. I couldn't read, and so yeah, I mean, a little bit of stuff about me. I feel like that's something that I've had a lot of shame my entire life. And it's really tough for me to put things on paper, because my thoughts are so jumbled, and I'll start to write something down and it just won't feel right. It won't sound right. And so I'll cross it out, I'll scribble it out, and I'll write it again. And if you look at that scene, I'm fairly certain if you look at that scene, I think it, like, one of the camera angles shows like what I'm writing. And you can see multiple areas where I've crossed things out, and and it was just like, it was one of those things that was really, I don't know, like, when I think of vows, those hold a lot of weight, like, that holds a lot of weight. And I don't want to give my wife new vows that aren't perfect. And that the reality is that scene, they gave us 15 minutes to write. And so I was sitting there doing my best, writing it down. And honestly, I got really, really in my head, and I got really, really insecure. I got really, really insecure about the topic. And the reality is like, I was really embarrassed. And like, the reality is I was about to read, something as important as vows to the entire world. I was about to read that to the entire world. And that was terrifying to me. That was absolutely terrifying to me. To like, and like, I mean, looking back, like, maybe that was an ego thing. Maybe it's an ego thing. Me thinking of how, like, people might look at me and how I read or how I write as, something. And like, but I'm human. I'm human. And the reality was, is I did my best to be able to write in that moment. But things just weren't aligning. Things weren't, I don't know. It was just one of those things. That was a really tough exercise. And that wasn't the only one that we did. We also had to write a note to our child, like, self or something. And I struggled there too. That wasn't the only time. It wasn't just my vows to Jalyn that I struggled in writing to on camera. It was also that, which is all about me. It's all about me writing something to my childlike self, and I even struggled to write that. I was able to read that because, once more, it didn't hold that same, like, value to our relationship as I view vows. And so that was the difficulty there. And that's, and I'm not trying to, put any excuse out there as to why I shut down in the moment, because, like, I don't know, I should have been able to, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but I should have been able to be a better man. I should have been able to be a better partner. a better lover to Jalyn in that moment, and understand that, like, you know, she told me that, hey, you could have just wrote like some silly little things on here and I would have been okay. But the reality is that's not what that meant. Like, I'm not saying that I didn't trust that that's how she felt, but like I said in the moment, like I was so insecure about like my ability to write that I broke down. I broke down in that moment, and I didn't know how to recover from it. I didn't know how to I felt like I couldn't just pick up my, you know, pull up my pants and just fucking pick up the book and just read it. You know, I felt like I couldn't do that. I just shut down.
It's understandable.
Yeah.
Was Jalyn aware of your dyslexia, or did you let her know in a moment that you were having, or even after, did you let her know that
No, it's nothing that No, nobody knew that. Nobody knew that about me. She knew that I failed first grade because I couldn't read, but she didn't know it was because I was dyslexic.
So throughout the course of that situation,
I had to work extra hard to overcome that child.
So she wasn't aware of this then?
No, she probably still doesn't know. I'm ashamed of it. Like, it was something that, like, okay, it's a shame that I never grew out of. This is the first time that I've ever spoken publicly about it. This right here is the first time that I've ever spoken public about that side of me. So yeah, it's something that I've been ashamed of my whole life. It's something that I've been ashamed of from, you know, the time I was a kid, you know, because all my friends and that were higher grades than me now, like, they all made fun of me, you know, they all laughed at me because I failed first grade, you know? And so it was just one of those things, like that area of shame that I felt my whole life because of it. And it was highlighted in that scene.
I get you. I get you. I understand. It is the covering of yourself to not expose yourself in that vulnerability. You know, you've worked hard to cover those cracks, and it's like, this is another difficult moment to expose oneself. You know, whether you get a safe space or not. So I can understand that there was a difficulty in being able to share that with Jalyn. It's a shame that she didn't get to know that, because I think we both know Jalyn would have been able to handle that aspect. But I also understand in a moment how difficult it is to share something like that, which we consider to have shame around, which makes us feel very unsafe. So that makes massive understanding now as to why that moment played out the way it actually did. How did that affect you guys then after? Because again, this is one of those situations where it wasn't the biggest thing, but it was a disconnect for you two. So how did that affect your relationship with her?
Honestly, I feel like if I can replay that moment in my head, I feel like Jalyn and I sat there and kind of like hashed it out afterwards, after the scene ended. And like, after everybody left, I feel like I don't remember if we were just like laying in bed talking about it. But I feel like we were able to hash out that situation very quickly. Like, for the most part, Jalyn and I, like, we communicated very effectively. And so, like, if I remember correctly, we hashed that out, because that scene happened like later in the evening, I think. And I'm fairly certain we hashed that out within a couple of hours, like within an hour or so. So I don't think that was something that really held us back or anything.
So what was said then for her to feel I guess, quote unquote, to be at peace with you? Because I'm guessing, did you ever, so you didn't ever read what you wrote, in a sense? You wrote you read the child one, but in terms of
I never read.
Oh, go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I never read them to her, but I also left that notebook on the counter in the kitchen for probably weeks, like probably a week or 2 weeks. So like, it was right there. And I'm not saying that she would have that she would have gone in there to read it, but I did leave that notebook on the counter, and she very well could have read it, but we never personally like opened it up and like read it together or anything like that. So if she ever read it, then it was completely on her time.
So how was she okay with it then? Because if you never read it, she never read what you wrote. How was she okay? Was she also not being truthful about how she felt then?
Well,
Because
I think
that's a big moment.
I think it. I think it was. I don't remember. I don't think that she was like super affected by that experience. Like, I think that she could see that I was struggling, and I think like in the moment, like she kind of like pressed for me. She kind of pressed for me to read it, and tried to give me the comfort that I needed to be able to read it in the moment. But I think that like whenever we talked, I don't remember a whole lot about that specific topic. And it probably is because it probably didn't fester into something that was actually like something big. I think we were able to just talk through it, and I was able to just show her like, hey, I just felt really, I was embarrassed. I think probably everything that I just told you, I probably told her, but just without the dyslexia part of it. So I probably told her that I felt embarrassed. I probably told her that I felt, those things. And I think that if I remember correctly, like it was just one of those things that she could understand where I was coming from. And she didn't like tie that to like me not loving her or, anything like that.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate it. Well, listen, we're on our final leg. We've got 10 minutes, all right? And I've kept you longer than I was meant to keep you, so I apologize. Thank you for sitting with me, bro, and just chopping it up with me. You know me. I appreciate that as well. I think the whole world will probably will probably take me out if I don't ask that question. What was the final nail in the coffin between yourself and Jalyn? Because what happened as to why this came to a divorce? Because it seems like you guys did 1.5 years. You did, a good amount of time in terms of relationship, and it seems like you guys found yourself back on good tracks again. What took you guys out? What is the cause of this divorce for you guys?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great question. It's a long question. So I know that you said that we have 10 minutes, but, the reality is that Jalyn and I's relationship wasn't perfect whenever we ended. Yeah. Yeah. Jalyn and I's relationship wasn't perfect all the way up to the end. Jalyn and I, we struggled sexually, from I'd say 2 months in, from 2 months in, we had sex, like, at least a few times a month, but like, that wasn't, like both of us knew that we didn't have a healthy sex life. And so that was one of the things that we struggled with. We struggled with trust, through the whole relationship, her towards me. We had a lot of issues, on top of the reality that, this experience taught me that I really want to share those experiences with a partner that has the same love for them, or at least has the love for witnessing my experience. And that's where I felt like I was being like, where I wasn't understood in the relationship. I didn't feel seen in that aspect. Like Jalyn, she did go to festivals with me. She did go to Burning Man with me. And I loved that. I was so incredibly thankful for that with her. But the reality is I noticed that I just didn't feel like and like, this is no fault of her own. Like, this is perfectly fine, that this wasn't something that she was passionate about, but I realized that this is one of those topics that I just really wanted to share with my partner. I really wanted to share that love for these things with my partner. And I don't want a twin. I want to make that clear. Like, I don't want somebody who likes everything that I like. Like, I would have never expected Jalyn to go scuba diving with me. I would have never expected her to, ride on my motorcycle with me, or, do these things. Like I understand like her not wanting to do those things, but these specific topics are something that I really love. And I really want to share with my partner, and I really want them to have that same love for it. And, that's something that I learned within this experience. And, you can tie it all the way back to the beginning, where I was like, where I was agreeing, I was like saying, hey, like, maybe this is okay. Like, I'm okay if you don't want to go to Burning Man, blah, blah, blah. I had never been with somebody who didn't share that love. That was another thing. I'd never been with a partner who didn't share that love for these experiences. And so I didn't know how much that relationship, how much that experience together meant to me until I didn't have it. And then when I realized I didn't have it, I felt empty in those areas. I felt like I couldn't connect with my partner in those areas. I felt like we weren't, I don't know, it was just one of those things. And, I don't want to discount how Jalyn felt at the end. She says that she felt blindsided, but we were both aware of the issues that we faced all the way up until the end of that. We were both aware of the issues that we faced. And I think she can tell her story how she wants, but we both know the reality. And I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair the way that things have been, I just don't think it's fair. And I'll just leave it there. But I know that we both know the reality of where our relationship was towards the end. And I know that both of us know that it wasn't healthy. And I'll leave it at that. Because I think that says enough. And I'm not here to, air any like, I'm not here to, say anything to hurt her or to expose her and anything like that. But the reality is that we were just different in areas that I really want to experience love with my partner in. And we just weren't that. And yeah, that's really all there is to it.
I know we've got a few minutes left. Obviously unhealthy sex life, sex usually isn't the issue. It's usually what connects sex, which is usually an emotional connection issue. So what was the disconnect as to why the sex life was suffering? What was the disconnect that was happening? Because that's happening for month 2. So what's happening that's not connecting? What was the issue?
Yeah. So, once more, not once more, this is a completely new topic. So I am a person that loves for my partner to instigate sex as well. And she didn't like to instigate sex. And so essentially, if I wasn't instigating, then we weren't having sex. And so that was a thing. And, I think even Belinda touches on that topic towards Chad and talks about how she wants him to instigate sex, and like how she doesn't really instigate. And Jalyn is the same way. She didn't really ever, I'm not to say she never did, because she did, right? She did on occasion, but she never, it wasn't like an even ground. Like, it was like, you instigate this much and she'll instigate this much. And it was just like one of those things that was like, I don't know, for me, like, I want to feel wanted too. I want to feel like my partner wants to have sex with me, and it's not like when we had sex, I felt that way, but I just wanted to feel like she wanted it as bad as I did, and that just wasn't, it was never our reality. Like, it was never our reality. And we talked about this. Like, it wasn't like I stayed quiet on this topic. Like, I told her, like, hey, I would like for you to instigate sex as well, you know, and it just wasn't one of those things that happened.
No, I get it. I totally understand it as well. And I guess my last question on this thing, not on this aspect, but on something new, is what happened with the Chad situation? Chad said that, you know, you had a conversation and you felt some type of way about production, and he, you know, did he misread it? What happened? Because I know in the reunion they kind of addressed it a little bit, but what happened there? Did Chad? Did
Yeah,
you
I'll
Chad
tell
have a
you.
conversation about production? Mm-hmm.
No, we absolutely did not. I personally felt like I had an incredible experience with production from day one. Like, Jalyn and I, we never fell into that. Like, I feel like a lot of the people in the cast fell into this trap of feeling like production was out to get them. I really and truly feel like that was a trap that a lot of people fell into. But Jalyn and I, neither one of us ever felt that way. I mean, like, obviously there were some things that were like, it's just like the Burning Man conversations. It's like, okay, look, they made us hash out Burning Man 100 times. Like, they had it to the point where I can understand where the distaste in everybody's mouth is toward Burning Man, because I was the same way. I was the same way during filming, which I know is probably surprising, but I was sick and tired of talking about Burning Man. I was sick and tired of it. But even then, I still didn't think that like production was out to get me. And so the conversation with Chad that he's talking about, that I said that, I don't even remember what he's saying that I said, but anyways, that never happened. Like, he said it was via text message. I showed him my messages. Like, that never ever happened. Like, but I never felt like production was out to get me ever. Like, I was always great friends with all, you know, my whole team of production. Like, they were awesome. Like, I never once thought production was out to get me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, listen, look, Josh, you have been forthright, and I mean, I could do this for the next few hours, you know, but I know time is precious. But I want to say thank you for having a conversation with me. Thank you for sitting down, being vulnerable, sharing your perspective, sharing your thoughts. It's really given me a greater insight into your experience on the show, and I recognize there is so much more to what we saw on the screen. And I love the fact that there was, you know, added conversation around the topics that came up with your relationship with Jalyn as well. So thank you very much. And thank you for just being vulnerable, man to man. You know, it was good. You know, other men see this, and I hope they can also learn to be as vulnerable as you are being as well. So any final thoughts?
Honestly, man, I want to say, you know, thank you to you as well. I really appreciate your, like, how you think. And, you know, the reality is like, I want to be held accountable for what I did wrong. You know, I want to be told when I do something wrong. I want things to be highlighted whenever, you know, because the reality is I may not understand what's even causing me to have these actions. And so I just really want to say that I appreciate your input and how, you know, I understand that like we think differently on certain things. And I really appreciate like you painting that picture for me in a way that like maybe I've never even thought of, because I feel like that's, you know, some of the ways that we have these breakthrough moments, and like we can put the pieces together and understand like what's causing us to do certain things. I like to think of myself as, you know, somewhat emotionally intelligent anyways. You know, I'm always trying to understand what causes me to do something. I'm always trying to understand like why I did something, or, you know, why I didn't do something, or, you know, and so like having that perspective, having that, I really appreciate it. And I really hope that we can continue this conversation. And I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. I'm going to read these super chats really, really quickly because some people made some messages for you as well. Practitioner Her said, This is my type of guy. Hashtag team neurodivergence. She says. Another one, she said, welcome to the hashtag unmasking club, Josh. It's always a beautiful thing to see unfold. Shout out to practitioner. She said a lot. Said, I love you, Kojo. Love you, get it as well. Thank you as well for that. And practitioner her said again, practitioner, you send a lot of money. I thank you. I appreciate it, babe. Honestly, I appreciate it. She says he's showing clear signs of scadolding. It's his brain works using systems to organize his thoughts. Oh, that's why he's really connected to your point about connecting dots. That's the way a neurodivergent science survives in a world that isn't built for them. Wow. Okay. I'm gonna have to do some research. You get me? You see, people out here giving me some deep stuff. She says, please don't stop unmasking. Proud of you. And that's to you, Josh, as well. And then two more were said as well. We have Tempican says, we know this is hard, but you're helping to heal the people as well. And then we have from Tempicus again, excellent conversation. Thank you both. Well, listen, audience, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to say thank you for sitting with us. And I knew that this conversation with Josh would be a deep one. I know because we had a conversation behind the scenes. So I knew that you were somebody who's going to, really think deep and understand why you're doing things. And I think that's always a beautiful thing. So you're always welcome in our community. We'd love to have you more as well. And we'll talk behind the scenes, I'm sure, as well. But audience members, thank you for joining us. And we will see you on the other side. Okay. All right. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe, click on the bell button for notification of the uploads. Don't do anything that I wouldn't do. Okay. There's not a lot I wouldn't do. I'm joking. I'm a changed man. Listen, behave yourselves out there. Stay safe and stay locked. We'll see you again. You know what time it is. Thanks, guys.